How you doing today?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I'm good. Okay, we're good, Stu.
Okay, and I want to thank you, Savon, for all the work that you've done to make this a success.
Well, I'm definitely happy to be part of the team. You're welcome, and thank you, too, because it's taking all of us, and you have quite a job on your hands with all the production stuff. You know, I'd be like, my eyeballs would be popping out of my head. I wouldn't.
That's a piece of cake.
No left from right, so thank you, too.
All right, I'm going to let you two talk about whatever your subject is because I don't know.
All right. Well, welcome, United We Win listeners, to the Humanity Transcending Show. I am your host, Siobhan of the Leis Family, and I have a super special guest with me tonight, someone who's become a dear friend very quickly. His name is Stuart of the Leis Family, and this wasn't planned. This was kind of spontaneous, so it's going to be fun to see where it goes. I have some things I know I want to touch on, but, you know, Stu and I have spent hours and hours on the phone just having amazing conversations. So welcome, Stu. You with us?
I am with you.
All right, so
I don't know how amazing this is going to be. I just say it how it is from what I've known, and you have an amazing way of digging stuff out of people, so I can see why you do radio shows.
Yeah, oh, thank you. That's a good compliment. I do. I like to dig. I find the more layers I dig through, the more understanding I have, and I learn new things, incredible things, crazy things, right? On United We Win, we talk about all the various situations going on in the world, from, you know, the New World Order to geoengineering to, the contaminated food and and the radiation and all sorts of the banking system. It just goes on. And so this whole program is about exposing a lot of those things. And lately I can see myself and some of the others moving towards more of our own freedom, like really, really caring a lot about our personal freedom and our collective freedom. And so I know you happen to have a passion for that as well. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, you would be. I didn't even know I did. It's just something that it's innate, and you wonder about maybe years ago, and you don't even formulate all the questions about it yet, but you know that there's something missing, there's something wrong, and as time goes on, you say, hey, this isn't right, and what about this? And you start digging and looking and maybe trying things, and that's I guess where I started and where I am today. But everybody wants to be free. Nobody wants to live in a cage like an animal or tied to a stake or be oppressed. Nobody wants that. I mean, going back to ancient times, nobody liked that. But I guess some we have to put up with and some we don't have to.
Right, and I guess part of it is coming to recognize that the various ways we're a slave to begin with. Like,
most don't even know.
Yeah, my life. Yeah, who I was before several years ago was, I thought I guess I was awake, but, looking back, and I'm not making myself wrong for it or anything, but I just realized how, in some ways I was really sleepwalking. I didn't know that I was an economic slave. I didn't know that I was subjecting to myself to things that I couldn't take a stand for and not subject myself to. I had no idea. So coming to know all of these various things about the world and what's happening really did help me wake up and recognize that, wow, I'm a freaking slave, and you know what? I'm not okay with this. So it definitely sparked something, learning all this information, and I know you know a lot about things. I don't want to say where you are, but I can say you're in Canada, in that greater area, and you get geoengineering chemtrails out there too. You see that, right?
Oh yeah, we sure do.
Everywhere.
Not so much in the rural farming agriculture area, but as soon as you get into the bigger cities, they see it right away. And I've been there and I saw it.
Amazing. It's happening everywhere. So lots of things happening, and so the drive for freedom I can see for myself, and then meeting you, someone who's been at the playing the freedom game for a while, and in a way has achieved a certain level of peace. Is from what I gather from your efforts. It's like you get to experience now, for the most part, the fruits of your labor, and maybe it was treacherous sometimes, this path. And I guess I should be more clear what I'm talking about when I say this path. Embarking on a path of personal freedom, in a nutshell, sort of pulling oneself out of the jurisdiction or the authority of a corporate government, a corporation posing as a government, removing ourselves from that and declaring who we are, whatever that is, but removing ourselves from that. And so that is, it seems like it's a bigger game, but then I guess it's just like everything else in a way. But there are higher stakes involved. But I'm inspired by Stu because I've learned a lot from him, and I see that, it's possible. What I watch in a lot of videos and I read in a lot of on the internet and books and things about this personal path of freedom. Some people call it sovereign, some people call it free man, some people call it the creditor. There's a lot of names for it. I find myself calling myself just a private woman, meaning I'm separating myself from the public distinctly. But there's a lot of ways to say it. What's your take on that, Stu? I mean, do you have anything to say about that? Because it's called a lot of different things, right?
I never even considered myself wanting to be any of those particular vernacular terms. I just wanted to find some answers, and you could so easily be categorized, by media, for instance, or other people, as being one of those, and I detest that. I don't want to be considered as one of those, because very often you end up being called a weirdo, or a tax protester, or a detaxer, or a sovereign, or free man. Any of those kind of words. I don't want to be called any of those words. But if even the Holy Bible says to come out of Babylon. I mean, that's a pretty serious phrase. Come out of Babylon, like. It means Babylon, it considers to be everything of the world, everything that is not of God's design, but of the world's design, like, leaning toward the pagan, the godlessness. And that's what it calls Babylon. Come out of it, my people. And I used to read that years ago and thought, well, gee, that must mean something. And what is Babylon? And here's what it does. It oppresses. And not even
and deceive, right?
And deceive,
and oppressive, right?
Not even dealing with that so much as the mere fact that it seems that people, myself anyways, almost had to have gotten beat up. Normal people making a really good living, the perfect family, the big house and the good job and the 2.5 kids and the new minivan, all those kinds of things, the status quo, those kind of people will never rock the boat. They don't know anything's wrong, and they like things just the way they are. They want to watch Monday Night Football. They want to have a beer on the weekends and have their 3 weeks of holidays. They don't even know something's wrong. But when things aren't going quite so good, or you've been working for a living, and like we in agriculture and going through really oppressive low grain price times and trying to make a living and having trouble doing it.
And let me ask you a question right here. Are you do you get harassed by Monsanto? Do other folks involved in agriculture upplay you?
No, we just pay them.
You just pay them to get them off your back, but they do try to come in and dictate?
They would try. If you didn't pay them, you couldn't grow their product. So we're dealing with them. We don't like it. There's a high fee per acre use to use their technology. We've paid that for at least 15 years already, and it's like something like $17 an acre just to use it. It's called a technology use agreement, TUA. You pay it or don't use their stuff. If you use their seeds, you'd be charged.
I've heard some wacky stories about Monsanto. Even in Canada,
they'll
actually,
charge farmers.
Where they go and they plant the seeds themselves. They send their goons out to the farms, and then, next thing you know, they're testing your wheat or whatever and finding GMO seeds where, to your knowledge, there was none.
There wasn't any. And it could be blown in from the wind or water. Water flowing, the natural spring runoff can do that. Trucks running by, it blows off the trucks. I mean, the trucks are tarped, but I've driven lots of trucks with the tarp shut, and there's still spills along the edges of the tarps, and I know how because canola seeds are so tiny, they can blow so easily, and you see the stuff sometimes spilled on the highway, even where a truck stops, and some guy cranks his hoppers open to clean them out on the highway, and there's seeds there. Birds can carry them. Wind can blow them off the highway, and they can be in your field. There's many reasons how they can be in your field, and it could be alleged that you illegally grew their stuff and you didn't. So it can sure happen. And we know there was one big case in Canada with this Percy Schmeiser. I think everybody's heard about it.
I have. I've seen him in The Future of Food. He was featured in a documentary about food and how much.
Actually.
Really? Wow. Has he been successful at all at any point? I mean, I know he was like David and Goliath, but he went for it.
Yeah, he went for it. I guess the fight cost him a veritable fortune, like his entire almost retirement fund. But it didn't. He wasn't really fined. He lost because I don't think you can win. But he didn't have some of the technology that we have to address charges like you and I have been talking about, these past weeks. And if you can address charges in a certain way and get through the administrative process, you can handle some pretty hefty stuff with that.
This is
Otherwise, just fighting in court, you can't beat them. So I believe he lost.
Yeah.
It's useless. He lost, but he didn't get jail or any big fine. So it was they just called it quits. So they just grew him older and made him broker. And I know he had a lot of help from foreign countries as far away as Germany, sending him money for the defense fund, because he was considered quite a hero to take them on. Like the man is just the salt of the earth Saskatchewan farmer, and to take on something as big as that, you got to take your hat off to him.
Yes, absolutely. I saw his story in that film, and I was just like, wow, and his wife, they interviewed his wife too, and she was so upset, it's just, I can't imagine.
It draws your all your energy out of you, because he was tied up in courts for so long, and those kinds of battles, and I don't believe he's guilty. He's not the kind of a man that would rob Monsanto for, one little ounce of seed. I'm sure he was not guilty of any of that. But it doesn't matter. They alleged it. Just because they allege it, you got to go to court, and it drains your time and energy out of you. I mean, it consumed them as court cases consume anybody, especially if you're not really guilty of breaking any law.
Well, let's get into that. So, Stu's good. He's sailing now for what? I don't know, 15 years, something like that. I'm just getting started on my path, and so, well, that's not true. Like, I've been studying for a while, this freedom path, and, just things, let's say, like that the United States is a corporation, and all of its so-called laws are really like bylaws of a corporation. So getting present to that, and then getting present to that there is no money, that we're the creditors of whatever money exists, and the various ways we can actually operate as creditors and zero out debts. And it's really just incredible, the information that I've not only been reading, but now I'm at a level where I'm like having hours and hours of discussion about it, and it's totally shifting my whole world, and it's amazing, and I'm working it. I'm in a situation, I've mentioned this a couple times, got pulled over, arrested for some warrant out for my arrest from 2008, for a suspended license, driving with a suspended license. I never showed up for court, and so they arrested me, and I knew I couldn't just, bow down and, let myself be treated the way they ended up treating me anyway. But nonetheless,
like a criminal.
Like a criminal. But I knew too much at this point, and so thus began the path of me claiming who I am now and pulling myself out of that matrix And so that's what I've been up to, and went to jail twice and the whole thing, and thank God it wasn't for longer than it was. And I guess part of this thing, though, is like being willing to not, my language, not give a F if, because you got to have that, stamina in a way. But, it's not a fun place to be. But anyway, so that's part of it. So I'm in the process of now, making affidavits, doing an administrative process, getting the court into default with my unrebutted affidavits, and that's all awesome, and that's going great. Now the second part, which Stu talks to me a lot about, is the oral exam. So if one wants to be a sovereign, right, like that's what I wanted. I started coming into this, I want to be sovereign. I want to be the authority of my life. I don't want these guys to control me anymore. I'm sick of that, all that. So, but it's work, it's not just words, it's our whole perception of ourselves.
It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's a whole different perception of, again, us and other people, like the courts, like the judges, like the officers. I mean, it's like everything's backwards. They took oaths to protect us, the folks of the land. That's what they took oaths to do, and yet everything's backwards. They're supporting the corporation. They're working for the corporation. So everything's backwards, and what I'm learning is we're learning how to twist it back the way it can be, which is really amazing.
And what they really are is public servants. Don't forget that. They're really public servants, and that makes us their bosses, but they sure don't recognize us as that. And they need to.
And when you know your stuff, sometimes they will recognize you. Is that so?
That's exactly so. They can be put in their place, and we're not out to hammer anybody down. It's just you're a public servant and you work for me, and especially in America, you guys have a pretty good ironclad constitution that's meaningful. Canada is lacking something of a constitution like you have there, and they're supposed to uphold that. We got some problems even knowing what our constitution even is here. But they're still public servants, and I'm not. I'm not a public servant. I'm not one of you. You don't get to tell me what to do. We put you there, and we can take you out of there.
That's right. This is the mentality we need to have. If folks are serious about their freedom, that's it. It's a total shift. It's a total shift to being the boss, and we don't have to be nasty about it, but that is the truth. They swore that, not me. So that was something I did when I was in the jail, and just, I'm reminding them of their oaths, and I'm remembering that for myself. And it feels good. It's empowering to throw that out there, to say that. So most people in jail don't talk that way. Like you must have stuck out. They'll never forget you having visited them for a day or so there. They'll think about you for many years to come. Yeah, well, everybody heard it from me, because any one of them that was ordering me or trying to give me something to sign or give me a paper, they knew the second time when I was there, they go, she didn't take it last time, she's not going to take the paper. And I go, that's right, I'm not taking it. But it's just, and again, it's not pleasant. And thank God, as humans, we, you like to quote the Bible, so I'll use something that you would know, like this too shall pass. Thank God everything passes, because it's just got to be stagnant, staying in the same space for too long is just not, we're not meant to, so thank God it passes, and now I can actually chuckle about certain things, but I wasn't laughing in there.
The jail is not funny.
No,
it's serious. They treat you pretty rough in there, and you can be quite a hero outside of jail, but end up going in there, and I'll tell you, you'll think different. You think pretty small. I mean, you're being locked up and fed poor food and being bossed around by big heavy thugs and well, it's very demeaning, to say the least, and no contact with anybody via telephone or any other medium. They can sure wear you down, stick you there for 3 or 4 days with no shower, and you'll appear in court and you'll just about do anything they want you to do. That's their tactic. It's fear and intimidation.
So they try to constantly get us into that debtor position, right? Into that slave mentality of they just want to, rob the individual of their energy and put them back in, right, put them back in front of the judge to get you to comply, right? Mm-hmm. Right.
And for the most part, it works with most people. It works unless you lose your fear of jail, and not many people do that.
Yeah, that's part of it.
It's possible to lose a bunch of it.
I'm getting on some phone calls this week with some fabulous spiritual life coaches I know, because I'm ready to exercise my fear, because if I may have to go back to court next month, that's the case, then I don't want to have fear in me, I just want to face it so that I can be as clear and grounded as possible. So that's what I'm going to do this week.
The only way that you can rise above it is to face it. And then really, when you look back, it wasn't all that bad. I mean, they don't really kill you in there.
No, but it's
you worry about that maybe,
but
you're going to survive it.
Right.
Well, and then you'll have gained experience that anybody else that has ever been there wouldn't have. And then you can say, well, okay, I've been there, done that. Now what are you going to do?
Yeah. I have some questions I want to get into. I just want to take a moment here to just acknowledge what we're doing here, where you guys are tuned into United We Win marathons, where all day long you hear up-to-date information regarding just about everything corrupt and what we can do to move ourselves out of it and break free from it. And very enlightening topics all day long. You're tuned into Humanity Transcending. I'm your host, Siobhan of the Leis Family, and I'm with my wonderful guest, Stuart of the Leis Family. And one of the things we really concentrate on in these marathons is there's like a slogan. It's don't buy, don't comply, ask why. And don't buy, to me, means, don't buy into the propaganda via the media, via all the advertising of who you should be, how you should comply, how you should just respond without asking questions. Just don't buy into that. And then, of course, we could take a day to just not buy anything from like some of these monster corporations, if we can help it. And then, don't comply. And we can start asking questions. We can peacefully non-comply. We don't have to get into fights with people about it, but we can be a stand for ourselves and not just comply. We can really process something. If somebody's asking something of us or forcing us to do something, before we just go and comply, we can really process it in our mind first, and maybe even process it through our heart too. And then we'll have a clearer idea of what we want to do. But we don't have to just respond like that anymore. So that's the slogan for the marathon. So Stu, I wanted to talk to you about, well, lots of things. So we kind of touched on how it's not just words. There is like an oral exam, right? So we can do affidavits, and all this is very powerful. But there is that counterpart to it, to where we need to be able to speak it. We need to be able to have it. If we want to be sovereign, just for lack of a better word, not a lot of people are picking up on that word, so I'm going to use it. But to be that, we really need to. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Stu, what were you hearing me say?
It's got to be in your head. You got to be able to talk it, because you may be hauled into court sometime without your paperwork. You can very easily be separated from your paperwork. Now, it's got to be in your head. You have to be thinking in that range, in that dimension, and it has to be who you are. So that's the oral part. You have to be able to stand on your paperwork without your paperwork, and you have to just know who you are and who they are and what's going on.
Okay, great. So thank you. That's exactly what I'm at. I'm at that phase of now. Just my paperwork is great. It's pristine. It's stellar. But I really need to just internalize it in every level of my being, so I can just be it. It's just who I am. So that's really critical. I would encourage anybody who embarks on a path of wanting to be sovereign or a free man or free woman or any of those phrases. I think they all just encompass the general essence of people's desire for freedom. So whatever people call it, fine, but just know that there's.
Well, isn't that why people move from other countries to America or Canada in years past? Because they heard that, and even so today, the immigrants coming because they heard that America or Canada is the greatest place to be. They think we're so free. Well, we're not quite so free. We know that. They don't. And when they get here, then they find out. But by and large, we still are two of the freest, and Australia, I suppose, too. It's two of the freest countries in the world. They're still better here than most others.
And if we don't recognize that ourselves, then our public servants are not going to recognize that. We have to bring that forward again. We have to really be the ones to recognize what's here already. Because it's here already. All we have to do is start living as such again, you know?
And don't lose what they try to take away. I mean, we just want back. We have to claim our rights. You have to claim them. If you don't put your stake a claim on the Klondike Gold Rush, that's my stake. Somebody else will take it. That's my claim. You have to say, this is mine, and I'm standing on this, and you can't have it, and that's final.
And that's a maxim of law too. I believe it's something like, "He who asserts no rights has none."
Exactly.
So it's very clear. Even their own law makes it very clear that if we don't claim something for ourselves or assert something for ourselves, it's just presumed that. Right, that we don't have that we don't have a right, or that we don't. Right, they'll presume for us what we have and what we don't have. So that's, we need to declare who we are and stay there, and stay there. So let's get into some really cool, juicy stuff. One of the things I learned recently is that anytime there are charges made against the straw man or straw woman, which is the all capital letter fiction, also a trust, right? When charges are made against it, those are really accounts that get opened. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is there like a negative book entry that goes into that account, and they basically want you to bring it to zero?
Well, yeah, they'd like us to. And one way they get us to do it is pay a fine or go to jail. Then they bond us there. But that's not our job to do that. They opened it, they can close it.
All right, so expand on that, right? Because when I was first hearing you say this, I just, again, because it's a whole mind shift, right, than what we've been taught. So to expand on that, charges as accounts, what does that mean?
It's very much like banking. The clerk in the court is like the banker. The bench, I think, is a very similar word to French bank. It's the same kind of a thing. They can monetize things. They can deal with these accounts as though they were a bank, like a bank account. They open them, and then we're supposed to pay for them. Like how? With my body, with my time, with my energy, my efforts, my money? No, it's all fiction. It's just all fiction, and it's all based on accrual accounting. So at the end of the day, it's just got to be balanced to zero. This side and that side just balanced to zero. That's why when you and I talk about they got to settle and close the account, it's just all accrual accounting. They can just make it all go to zero at the end of the day, and you can walk out of there.
Yeah.
But no, they want you to do something. Now, if you really, really commit a crime, like against one of God's main laws, which is thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, like those property crimes or crimes against people, that's a little bit different story. You need to be dealt with, because we don't want killers walking around amongst us, or thieves. They should be locked up.
That makes
what
sense,
you got jailed for, Siobhan, that to me is not law. That is not law. Statutes, highway traffic statutes, is not law. Codes, rules, and regulations is not law.
Right.
Law is quite defined as being outlined in the Ten Commandments. That's the basis of all law. Like Judge Roy Moore had in his courtroom down in Alabama. That's real law. I mean, you can expand on law from there, but that's the basis of all law. But all these thousands of acts, and Income Tax Act and Highway Traffic Act, that is not law, and they do not mean you. They're all charged against the person, the fiction, the corporation, not the real living, breathing man. They can't deal with you. So yeah, they open this account with this person, and then they summon you, or they summon the uppercase Siobhan Shirisi or Stuart Leis, because they summoned me already too, to come to jail or to the court, and we see this thing passed to us by maybe a police officer or sheriff or whatever. Say, oh, that's me. Well, no, it's not me. But we end up going there anyways and answering to it mistakenly. Then we become surety for it. Now you're going to go for the ride that it's supposed to be taking.
It's so
That's
interesting
one of the first
too,
things we can.
I was going to say, Stu, it's so interesting, too, that they use the word summon, in a way. Sometimes I joke about this being like black magic almost, the little tricks they use. But, to summon a living being to agree that they're a dead corporate fiction. It's just so mind-boggling, you know. And they even use those words. That it is a stretch, but they even use the words that mean you summon something. You're summoning something forth. You know, and I know that any charges against any straw man, straw woman, all capital letter name fiction. They're looking for somebody to be the surety, like you just said. They're looking to attach it to a living being so that the living being can pay either with their body in jail or pay their money they labored for or whatever. So it's really interesting how they use these words.
And then when you stand up and say, yeah, that's me, sir, or your honor, or judge, well, then you just became it. You just joined. They made joinder, you with the straw man. Now you try and undo that. It'll take some pretty fancy paperwork to try and undo that, because in that failed swoop, in that 2 or 3 second time frame, you've just made joinder.
Yes.
And it's that first couple of seconds in court that is so crucial of how you answer, how you appear. Like appear, I mean, right. Genies appear out of a bottle. I mean, we're not ghosts or genies, so we're supposed to appear in court. We're summoned to appear. Like it's the words that they use. It's
true.
Yeah, it's all crazy.
Yeah, and it's true. There's a lot of esoteric underlings to this. I know Jordan Maxwell does. Yeah, Jordan Maxwell does some really good videos on, I think, cracking the code of commerce or something to that effect.
I've seen them all.
Yeah, some really esoteric, hidden, mystical sort of knowledge that, they kind of hoard for themselves and use for their own benefit. It's summon, appear, yeah, exactly. All these things have very...
different meanings. Yeah. Different meanings of words that we don't, we understand the ordinary meanings of words like the word include. I mean, how that's used in their legal jargon. Nobody understands that.
It means the opposite, actually.
Yeah,
it means limited to. Include means limited.
The exclusion of one is the exclusion of everything else.
Yes. So it's misleading. A lot of this stuff is misleading. All right. Let's talk about trusts, because this is some really interesting, I think this is more of, would you consider like more newer information that's surfaced maybe just in the past few years where people have been getting?
Well, that's right. For me especially, I guess we started becoming aware that there is a trust situation out there, that everything is trust. That's maybe only 3 to 4 years or something that I've heard much about it. Before that, didn't really know that. Not that I can recollect, but then we become to realize that everything out there is trust. There's trust for everything. Your driver's license is a trust. Your birth certificate is a trust. Your social security number is a trust. Your bank account's a trust. Your MasterCards, your Visa is a trust. Your phone bill's a trust. Your library card's a trust. Like you wonder, well, what do you trust? What kind of trust? Well, they're all trusts. It's all trust indenture. It's not necessarily contract. It's trust indenture, and it's hard to wrap your mind around. But you start reading some of like Alfred Loring's trust manual, and I sent that to you, Siobhan, or Carlton Weiss's. I've been reading those, and if any of the listeners would read those trust handbooks, and then having hear us talk a bit about trust, you'd start to realize that, holy smokes, the whole U.S. Constitution was formed as a trust. Everything is trust. It really is no law form out there. It's all trust. So if it's trust, then that necessarily means that there's 3 parties to a trust: the grantor or settler, the trustee, and the beneficiary. Now, who are you?
Wait, you know what, Stu? Before we go no further, and I just want to let you rip, because when you go, it's freaking awesome. I love it. But in your own words, what is a trust for people listening out there? Just simply, what is a trust?
It's an agreement where the property of something is taken is used for the benefit of somebody else.
Okay.
And we are the beneficiaries because of the Big Master Trust started with our birth certificates. So something was taken or put into trust at a grand scale, at some governmental grand scale, that we were just babies, didn't even know it.
Like what, our bodies would be one of them?
Yes, pretty much. The birth certificate would be identifying the body. I mean, they even got weight and length. Right. And footprints. I mean, they're really identifying the body.
Eye color.
So that's put in eye color. That's right. That's put into a trust, and there's big fancy names like Sesta KV Trust, and all we can be of that is the beneficiary. We can be nothing else. We didn't even know it was being done. Our parents were the informants on it. They didn't know. They got one going for their name too. They didn't know, and their parents were too. This goes back, to about the 1600s when the Sesta KV Trust Act started. But our countries are not that old even, and this was done in the maybe 1800s, 1900s, and all these birth certificates are sent to the Depository Trust Company, 55 Water Street, New York. I mean, it's a trust company. The word's a dead giveaway. And that's where all the birth certificates are kept there. There must be, hundreds of millions of them there. And that's where the originals are. And they're used. We're collateralized like cattle. But we are the beneficiaries of it. And we have to, I guess, know what part that the beneficiary plays and what the beneficiary's job is. And beneficiaries always receive. And if there's three parties to the trust, there's got to be a trustee. And the trustees have to always pay. The trustee job is liable. So who would that be? Well, any government employee turns out to be a trustee. Anybody who gets paid a government check would be a trustee. Anybody with a law certificate or a law license or subsisting certificate, as maybe some call it in Canada, any lawyer basically would be a trustee. Any government agent would be a trustee of that trust, and that would be liable. Well, the grantors are now gone. Once a grantor puts something in, he backs away, and he's no longer part of it. So that first part of a trust, that first position is gone. There's just really two positions left: the trustee and the beneficiary. And the courts are fooling us or deceiving us to thinking that we're the trustees and that the state benefits. So we give our money to the state, like you have to pay $100 fine or $500 bailment money or something. Well, we're paying it, so that must obviously we're liable, and they're receiving it. So they've switched the roles, and they're the beneficiary, we're the trustee. That's dead wrong. It can't be that way. But that's
so when we come forward, when the living being comes forward and says, "No, I'm the beneficiary,"
that's what they call expressing a trust. Verbally expressing a trust. Trust could be implied. You can express it right there on the floor of the courtroom, even if you're in handcuffs, with no paper, no affidavit, no pen, no nothing. Just speak it. That's expressing a trust, because that's your day to be heard, and they got to hear you to say, "I'm the beneficiary, and I don't consent to any other beneficiaries. I'm the only one that can get any benefit of this. Don't take my stuff and give it to anybody else. That would make somebody else a beneficiary, like the court or the IRS or some bank or some collection agent or whoever it might be. They consider them as being beneficiary to take your property and give it to them. They'll dole it out. What they're really, really, really doing is they're probating your estate. And that's all trust as well.
Can you explain that in like layman's terms a little bit? Because that's one that I still have a hard time. That's one that I still have a hard time wrapping my head around.
See, we always think as ordinary people that probating the estate is a term that's used when someone dies, like your grandmother or your uncle or whoever. Someone dies, and then they probate the estate. They're settling the estate. Well, they're doing that to us. We're not dead yet, but the name is dead. The uppercase name is dead.
Right, the uppercase name is dead fiction, right?
It's dead fiction. Never was. It was born. It was stillborn, basically. It never was alive. So they're probating that estate, and we stand there and let them do it. They have to be stopped. We have to express the trust and say, "No, I don't consent." So they're trying to probate that estate. They're trying to take your time, your body, your resources, your cash, your check, your bank account. They're trying to take it. And if it's a $100 fine, they've just probated your estate to the tune of $100. Sometimes it's much, much worse. Sometimes it's 5 years in jail, and you didn't break no law, no God's law, like murdering or stealing or
which by the way is where all their law comes from. That's the basis of all this law nonsense, which aren't really laws. There's statutes and codes.
Siobhan, they've added to it, and the Bible explicitly says, "Do not add to, do not take away." And they add, well, how many codes have you got? You've got
thousands and thousands,
tens of thousands. So they've added to it. There is enough law in the Bible to completely run planet Earth. As a matter of fact, when Queen Elizabeth, I mean, you people don't recognize her as much as your Queen as Canada does, because we're a Commonwealth nation, But when she took her coronation oath in 1952, and I've seen it on video, I've got the whole thing saved someplace, she was presented the King James Bible, a special version, like any other, but just a nicely bound one. And they said there's all the law that you'll ever need. Everything you'll ever need in here to reign as a monarch is in here. And she accepted it, and I even kissed it, I believe, and agreed and took her oath on it. She swore to God to uphold that. And then it wasn't weeks or months, and she's signing her name on more laws passed by Parliament. She just added to the law of the Bible. There's enough, with those 10 commandments in there, there is more than enough to rule the world. But no, we have to have more. Well, we
I want to interject here just for a second, just for people, let's say are not religious, right? Like, you can look at the 10 Commandments.
Being religious.
No, I know, but I like to just make it invitable, like, for everybody. So I just want to put it out there that the 10 Commandments are like, if you really just look at them, they are I don't even want to say good. They're a way of living in which we can have harmony. So when we don't murder, we have harmony. When we don't steal, we have harmony. When we don't covet, and we know that there's nothing but abundance and that we're taken care of, then there's harmony. So the 10 Commandments can really be just guidelines for a way for us as, civilized beings in harmony with each other to live. So for folks who can hear it that way. It doesn't. You don't have to be, let's say, a Christian to follow those guidelines.
Nothing to do with
because, that. They're just really great guidelines, is all it is. So I just wanted to throw that in there, everybody has different beliefs and blah blah blah. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people who maybe have no belief in anything like that, but just to see them as guidelines.
Well, people may not have any belief, and they're entitled to their no belief. But like you and I have said at different times, in absence of evidence to the contrary, I'm buying it. I have yet to see a book that touts itself as higher than that touts itself as a book that's written, inspired by God himself, and that has some different laws, that says you can murder, you can have whatever, take my wife for a weekend if you like, which is adultery. You can steal my car or my lawnmower, or you can, have my bank account money. You show me that there's a law that says that. Well, there isn't one.
Right.
Any religion, I don't care if you're an atheist or a pagan or a heathen or I don't care what you are, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to be murdered or to be stealed or to be beat up or robbed, right, or to have their adultery happen within the family. These are things that harm us morally, physically and morally. So they work. I don't care if you're what color, race, color, creed, or religion that you are. Religion is just a bad word. These are. It's like the best way to explain is like the operator's manual, written by the company that sold you this new microwave or car, or maybe it's a new air seeder or combine. As a farmer, that's what I relate things. We get a new piece of equipment like a new air seeder or combine. I'll tell you one thing: you don't go to the field and expect to use it without reading the manual. And you'll study it. You'll study it for a couple of days and get used to it, and you'll keep it, in the cab with you and refer to it often because you're going to have problems working the machine. Well, we need a manual on a daily basis, and that's called the Bible. And that is, we're not trying to cram religion down anyone's throat, not at all, but we need to have guidelines. Without guidelines, we have total chaos. And that's all that is.
There's tremendous value in it, even if somebody, if somebody shies away from it just because of the religion thing, there is just a lot of wisdom. And I hear a lot of the folks out there talking about being creditor, being beneficiary, being the sovereign. All of them have definitely a connection with their creator. They all really get that, there's something, it's like I didn't create my own body. I didn't put this thing together. I don't remember how it happened. So there's always something giving me life, something driving all this, and connecting to that as part of this path, would you say?
Absolutely. Life demands a lawgiver, or a life giver. Law demands a lawgiver, like the law of gravity. This isn't religious. Just jump off the Empire State Building and see what the law of gravity has to say to you. Someone had to make that law. So law demands a lawgiver. You say, I got rights. Well, what do you mean rights? Who give you rights? Government give you rights? No, government can't give you rights. Rights can only come from the Creator,
right.
God, as we call him. He has a more of a specific name. So if you have God-given rights, they cannot be taken away. You can give them away or trade them for privileges, but government doesn't give you rights. They give you privileges. No. Only God can give you rights. Only God can make laws. Only God makes laws.
Yeah, it's just inherent in us, and I think that's been part of this process for me. Is just really remembering that and starting to live that. It's just inherent. Nobody gives it to me, but of course I had the conditioning growing up, to just respond to authority and believe that in some way, my rights were given to me by the government, and to come to know that that's
school,
not.
Siobhan.
I know.
That's taught in the public school. That's where it starts. Obey authority. They say. It's who's they? They say this or they wrote that or I heard it on TV or on radio. It's always they are saying something. Who are they?
Yeah, very fundamental question.
This elephant in the room here, this boogeyman in the closet. Who is they that say this? And we never question. Well, who are they that say we have to obey this? Obey what? What do you mean obey? Obey what? What if it goes against my moral standards to do whatever? Right. Obey it for what reason? Who says? What's their agenda?
By what authority? Who says?
Yeah.
Another thing, I don't know if you want to go there. I don't know. I mean, if you feel like telling the story, but it's one of the best stories I ever heard about the bond. Can we go there or
the bond?
Yeah.
The one that I wrote.
The one, yes.
The get out of jail free card.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to. I mean, again, I don't want to divulge. I wanted you to go where you're comfortable with, but there's a whole other element to this free man path or whatever you want to call it. That again, we're the creditors of the money that exists. It's not really money, but all of this paper that exists is just credit. Well, actually, it's debt, but we're the collateral for that, which means we're the creators of the money. It comes from our energy, right? They pledge us as collateral, so it comes from us. There's a way we can.
They can't make anything.
Right,
they don't make anything. They consume. We produce. We're the creditors. The courts. If you're talking about courts, they're just fictions. They just sit there and they exist only on our backs.
Yes. So there are ways that we can actually live into this role as creditor and start offsetting debt and writing bonds and accepting for value, returning for value, all sorts of debts and things like this. So again, this is more so new knowledge to me. I was more in the sovereignty freeman information, and now I'm kind of listening to this other information about being creditor, and it's all making sense. It's all intertwined, and all of it's so useful. So I recommend just checking it all out and just totally keeping what works for you. But can you talk to us about what it means to be a creditor? What do we do as creditors? How does this blend with? One more question too. How does this blend with being the beneficiary, like that? I asked you 3 questions. Sorry, and one shot.
We need more than an hour. I'm supposed to talk about that.
I know.
Creditors bring settlement. It's like the boss of the plantation owner. He's got the checkbook. He can solve things, and if the slaves in the plantation aren't happy and they summon the owner to come there and hey, we've got some griefs or beefs or whatever, and he'll be summoned. He'll say, hey, come to the meeting out behind the big house and say, what's the problem here? Well, we have these grievances or whatever, and he says, well, I can fix that, and so he brings settlement. When he comes, he's the boss. He brings settlement. That's the whole idea of being creditor. But if he come there and start arguing with them, he wouldn't be much for a creditor. He'd be just a debtor again. Debtors, deny, they adjourn, they delay, they argue. So in life, never mind just going to court, we should always try to practice. Be the one that your friends, your coffee shop buddies, everybody that you know that sees you, that they recognize as that person. There's just something about him that whenever he comes, everything is fine. He finds solutions. Not always bringing your checkbook per se, but you find solutions. You solve problems. You've always got maybe a light in your step. You're not dragging and down and drawing their energy. You're not arguing with anybody. You're always looking for solutions. That's what everyone wants to see, and it sure works in a courtroom. The problem that I could see there is being a creditor and being a beneficiary can almost clash, because the beneficiary doesn't have to try to solve anything. Like in a court case, for instance, the trustee's job is to bring settlement, and that's not the beneficiary's job. So there's a fine line there that I see. So, but in normal life, in commerce, and every other thing, creditors are the ones that bring solutions. That's like for A for V, like accepting for value or writing a bond.
But in a way, Stu, the beneficiary might look for solution too in directing the trustees, saying, you know,
yes, he could.
Enough with this. I'm going to tell you to do this because I want resolution. This has got to be over with. So you need to do this and you need to do that. So in a way, maybe the two can blend as far as like the creditor being in charge and instructing.
Yeah. If you did it, then you'd be suddenly the trustee, and as soon as you start to meddle with the trust, you can end up being trustee decent tort, end up going to jail. They tell us that jails are full of trustees that meddle with the trust. Jails are full of debtors. I mean, those two blend. So,
and there are some guys out there being trustees. I know, like the creditors and commerce guys. But I guess that's a certain level of skill where you really need to know what you're doing, right? If you're going to say I'm the trustee, you better know what you're doing.
They can stick handle that around. Yes, they can. They know how to go in and how to go out, and how to just like Gretzky would stick handle a puck. So they know how to do that. But if you don't know how to do that, you better stick to safer ground and just say I'm the beneficiary. But since your country and our country is bankrupt, I don't think there's a nation on planet Earth that's not bankrupt. We're told the only entity that's not bankrupt is the post office, like out of Bern, Switzerland. But since America's bankrupt since 1933, since HJR 192, for those that want to study that, that was an act of Congress in June 5th, 1933. That's where they took all the gold and silver away, and they stated, well, we'll have to give the people remedy by paying all their debts dollar for dollar. Well, no one knows that. That's not taught in schools. We've learned that. Canada has something very similar. It's called an Order in Council, and we're told it's number 664, but don't quote me on that. I've been researching. That's what I've been able to find. That was like in April of 1933, so it's the same time frame. So the two countries do the same thing both at the same time. So they took our money away, and so what did they leave us with? They offset and adjustment, promises, bonds, promissory notes, accepting for value, and a creditor would use those tools to settle accounts. A debtor would just argue and say, I can't pay. So you end up in court and say, I can't pay. Well, then you're going to go to jail. Well, why can't? Because you won't pay or because you can't pay? Well, most people have no idea that they could pay. If I was fined $150,000, I say, oh, big deal. Give me a pen, give me blue ink pen, we'll settle that right away. Well, how about $150 million? I can't wait to
be like Stu. I can't wait to be like Stu.
Well,
one day.
Don't hold your breath, Siobhan.
No, one day. That's amazing, though. Go ahead.
It's a matter of I can pay. It's not I won't pay, because now that's being stubborn, and that's what a debtor would do. Hell will freeze over before I pay. Well, really, that's not exactly how a creditor would talk. So that's
a creditor as a beneficiary would say something like, you guys really need to settle this because we all need resolution here. This is just going on too long. You really need to all settle this.
Right.
If you need
my endorsement,
if you need
like
my
your
endorsement,
affidavit said, I can supply that for you too. Now you've been a beneficiary and also a creditor, and that can blend.
Okay, that's really cool. So what are some of the... Go ahead, finish up, and then I have another question.
I was going to say, if you're in court and the judge said, well, we have a fine to pay, and let's make it a very large and say it's a $1,000 fine. I mean, it's not exactly just pocket change. And one of the first questions you could ask them, well, okay, sir, that's fine. How would you like that paid? Would you take that in gold or silver? Well, no, they can't. Would you take a promissory note? Because we've done that. And then they say, well, we'd rather have cash. Oh, you'd rather have cash, but you will take a promissory note. Because in Canada, we have a court case, 1978. It was in Bank of Montreal versus Bank of Nova Scotia. Two banks were at odds here. And it was Justice Laskins was his name, in 1978, where he said that a promissory note in itself is the money. Like, that is, wow. That's unbelievable. Did you really say that? Did you mean that?
Say that, yeah, just say it one more time because I don't even...
A promissory note is itself the money.
And give me an example of a promissory note.
Well, a check is really a promissory note. A Federal Reserve note's a promissory note. They really are. A Bank of Canada, it's a promissory note, but you can just write a promissory note too. I'll promise to pay you this $1,000, and if you need to have a date on, okay, at such time as you make real money. Pay $1,000 in real money as you make some real money. Till then, you get this promissory note, and if it comes due in a year, come back to me, and I'll write you another promissory note for another year. We can do that till hell freezes over. It don't matter. And you really can. And I've written promissory notes. I've written several of them, and they work just dandy. And there's also the law of acceptance. If they keep them 3 days, they kept them. That's acceptance. Our Bills of Exchange Act in Canada stipulates that, and I'm sure you have a U.S. code because all that is really, according to the UCC. So it's uniform around the world, or of those countries that are part of the UCC. So if you keep something that's been presented for 3 days, they've kept it. They have to return it, and dishonor it right away. Otherwise, they've kept it. So if they keep your promissory note, it's paid.
Wow.
And Winston Strout would tell us that. He said, once you drop something in the mail, it leaves his fingers, it's paid. He don't care if it's 3 days or not. He said, it's paid. And they always keep it more than 3 days. They never send it back. The odd time they might. It might take 3 months, they'll send it back. We don't know what to do with this. Well, you're already done with it. You've kept it. It's
right.
on you. You can't get rid of it.
You've accepted it.
You can use a promissory note, and that promissory note could be for a very large amount. It could be any amount. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't. There's no, because there's no money. It's just all dits and dots and dashes. It's just computer entry.
Insane. So tell me the relationship between a promissory note and a bond.
Actually, they're very close. A bond's a promise to pay as well. Okay. And the bond that I used, I mean, I guess you maybe could structure in different ways, but it started off as saying there being no lawful, there being no lawful money of account, I hereby underwrite this with my personal exemption. And my personal exemption is my value at the DTC, Depository Trust Company, my birth certificate. No. And it's very high. It's not $1 million. It's not $2 million. It's not $10 million. It's very high. It's very high. I don't think we have to get into that.
May I ask a question to come out of my chat room?
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Siobhan. What is the correct wording for a promissory note?
Good question.
I promise to pay. I promise to pay the certain sum, just like a check. In fact, they're styled very much like a check. It's just I promise to pay, and you sign it. And I've had some here that I've had for a number of years that were kind of a bit of a template that you could use. There's no real template, but just I promise to pay. It's like an IOU, and it's serious. I mean, it's taken serious. And Judge Laskin in the Supreme Court of Canada in 1978 said that a promissory note is in fact the money. Well, I'm not going to argue with him. That's a very good idea, because that means we're all richer than you think. So I promise to pay some certain amount of money to whoever, and you could date it the day that you're doing it, but there doesn't have to be a date necessarily of when you're going to pay it by. It's a promise. And if somebody insists on a date, I want this done by a year, okay, fine, put a year down there. And then when the year's up, write you another one, because there's nothing that says you can't.
You could put like 2099 or 3000.
Yes, you could.
Totally crazy.
Remember we talked about Kevin Hines? He says you can. Kevin Hines was this bank vice president he's a bit of a guru I've listened to. He says, well, he worked in the bank. He says, we've had 35-year mortgages. There's other instruments that the banks use that have a very long time frame. Why can't a promissory note have the same kind of time frame? 35 years. Well, why not?
Why not?
There's no reason why it can't. Or you could say until such time as you all come up with some money. Like Lincoln had the Greeks. won't. That won't happen. So I guess your promissory note's going to suffice. So you could write a very large amount. But understand, people, like I can't buy a car from Siobhan and give her, $5,000 of a promissory note, because between friends that doesn't work. This works between us and the fictions, the corporations, the courts, IRS, Revenue Canada, because they're not giving you anything. You can't go to town and buy a car for a promissory note, but you can deal with things like even property tax. We've had people doing that because you didn't buy nothing for property tax. You got no services for income tax. They're just loading some debt on you, as Rice McLeod says. It's only for things that are of debt, taxes, even a mortgage. Now, you can say, well, I agreed to the mortgage. Well, yes, you did, but then suddenly the interest rate went from 1.5 to 15. Well, now what are you going to do? The house soon won't be yours anymore. You have no control over that. That's when he says you can start to use these other instruments like a bond or a promissory note to pay that off, because you didn't bargain on that. You thought you'd have this house for 1.5%, and suddenly it just went rampant. You can't stop that. So that becomes a debt. But you can't go buy something and expect to use that, because it won't work.
So this works with regards to just like outstanding debts already. Like we don't want to just go buying stuff and then writing bonds. We just like stuff that's like outstanding, that's like oppressive for us. We just want to get to zero again.
Court fines or IRS assessments, because they just come up with these plucked from air assessments, and they're doing it. They're doing it like wild. Canada, U.S. both. They just come up with these crazy plucked from air assessments, and they sent it to you, and you say, oh, my goodness, what am I going to do? And some people will get depressed, start drinking. Some will be suicidal. Some will argue with them, say, well, it can't be that much, maybe only half that. Well, pay us half. Well, in truth, in fact, you didn't owe them anything. They just come up with this number. They do these assessments, and they want to get your response. At least they got your attention now, so pay half or pay 25% or pay it over time. They got something where they should have had nothing. So that would be a debt. They loaded a debt on you. Or property taxes can change. They can change. They can double from one year to another. Or the course over 10 years, they can keep going up every year, and pretty soon you have to move out of your house. Can't afford the property tax. So you thought your house was yours. You thought you bought and paid for it. The house may be free and clear, but the taxes, they could end up having you lose the house. So that's where these instruments can be used. But be prepared for a fight. They're not going to take that laying down, because that's not ordinary for them.
Right. To
deal with. They're going to test you. There'll be an oral exam there too.
Right.
But the bond that I had used.
Let's get into this. And you know what? Let me just do a quick, really bring us to where we are, and then this is just like one of the best stories I've ever heard. And not to build it up, Stu. Like I know Stu is very modest, but I gotta tell you, it's pretty awesome. So before we get into that, I just want to let everybody know this is United We Win Marathon. You're tuned into Humanity Transcending. You can visit me at www.humanitytranscending.com. I am with Stuart of the Leis Family, and the marathons are all about don't buy, don't comply, ask why. We don't buy into propaganda. We ask questions. We don't go through life like zombies anymore. We're awake and we ask questions. So let's get back to you, Stu, and tell us about the bond you wrote when...
Let me say this first.
Yeah.
I love having you on the show, Siobhan.
Thank you.
I just want to say that you have done such a marvelous job, you and Karen, putting this together, and all I had to do was sit here and produce.
Awesome.
And but I got a quick question for Stuart.
Sure.
What's the only law, Stuart?
Pardon me?
What is the only law?
Don't harm anybody else's life or property.
Thou shalt harm nothing or no one. Thank you so much.
That's right.
I'm going to go back and listen. You can take as long as you want.
Okay, cool.
This is the 14th show today, and I just got one I had lost from Revolution Radio. So all
right, so we can keep going if we want?
My dear, you can go till hell freezes. Well, yeah, till hell freezes over if you want to. I'll be here.
Stu, I'll go as long as you want to go too, man. Stu, go for a long time on the phone. So, all right. Cool. Thank you, Dave, for the love. I appreciate it, and I just send it right back. So, Stu, bring us to the give us the whole thing, like the beginning, the middle, and the end of this experience of you writing a bond for yourself, if you can,
Well, I'd have to start, I guess, with some activity that I had conducted, that I was spreading my wings, I suppose, learning about banking and the fact that we're bankrupt. And I had some extensive information on the use of, and I hope I don't get in trouble for even talking like this, but the use of a certain style of check writing. And,
yeah, just be vague if you have to, because again, our protection is important, and just use vague things when you have to. Absolutely.
So there was nothing illegal about it. It was just not normal, and it was working too well, and they had to stop it. So that's easy enough. They'll just charge you and lock you up. And I sat there for a while on remand because they didn't know what to do with me. They needed to stop this guy from doing what he was doing, and there was others doing it successfully for years that I had information on. And I guess the bad thing is it's workable. It just, I wouldn't advise doing it because it can get out of control so easily. So whatever I did, and then at the court case, the prosecutor asked the chief police investigator, well, how much damage did he do? Well, the damage I did was nothing to anybody, but is financial to these corporations or to mortgages. I mean, there was nobody individually hurt because that was all covered. When there was a witness on the stand, I'd say, well, have you been damaged? Have I hurt you? No, of course not. So nobody was injured, nobody.
And let me just say one thing. Let me just interject. With regards to writing, close check, things like that, everything's prepaid. Like just to preface what you're going to get into, whenever we as creditors create currency through paper and a pen, it's all prepaid. Is that accurate to say?
Yes, that's right. That's very accurate.
So we're not taking from anything.
It's just a voucher to. It's like going to the military going to the supply crib and say, I need new boots or new M16. Well, you don't whip out a check. They just give a voucher and you get this, or a new helmet or whatever, or new bullets or whatever. They just say, here's what you need, or a new helicopter. If there's no, it's just a voucher. So that's what the closed check is really like. But anyways,
So we're not taking anything. We're not taking anything from anyone. We're literally the creators of it. So okay,
nothing.
Gotcha.
And I had to write a certain number of them to find out that they worked. If I'd have just written one or two or three, I'd have thought that they failed miserably. But I wrote, well, it was several dozen, and of those, 2 worked, and that told me enough that 1 in 30 worked. So if they worked, then why didn't the rest all work? Well, the banks were simply dishonoring the presentment because they couldn't let this cat out of the bag. So anyways, the prosecutor asked the cop, well, how much damage did he create? He said, oh, millions. Well, he was vague. Well, how many millions? Oh, 60, 75, maybe more. And I'm sitting back in the prisoner's box, 75 million. Like, what are you nuts? I mean, where do you get that? But why would I argue? Whatever you say, I'll use your own words against you. Is what I thought. I mean, use whatever. I can't fight this guy. He's a cop. He's got the guns and he's got the jail. So, okay, use your number. So, I just let that cook for a few weeks, and I was in court many times, and he was saying all this damage, but the damage was all monetary when there is no money, and nobody was injured. There was no property loss. So I thought, okay, use your number. And then we had heard of one of the gurus in the industry, Gene Keating, that he, in jail, well, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20, he got himself up by writing a bond. And I heard that. And he's the only man alive that I ever heard of that was able to do that. He was the first man, he even said he was the first man ever to do that, to write a bond. How that exactly looked, I don't know, but I mean, a bond was really only one way. It's a promise to pay. He said he did it kind of like a mortgage foreclosure, however that would all mean, but that's how he styled it, and it got him out of jail. He paid the bill. It's, will you pay or can you pay? No, I won't pay, but stay in jail. Like, these are really debtor's prisons. just like in the ancient times or biblical times. Jails are debtors' prisons. They keep you in there till the last farthing is paid. So, but if you can pay, that means give me a blue ink pen and I'll style a bond or whatever, and I'll bond my way out of here. So we heard about him, and I had quite a few friends on the outside, and you're allowed some phone calls. They're expensive as they are, but I had phone calls to my army of people on the outside, and they're on several provinces. I mean, not anywhere close by, and we were daisy chain linking up to talk to these people, and oftentimes even to Roger Alvick, who was my guru in the States at the time, and he's a very, very, very smart man in these matters.
What's his name?
Roger Alvick. He could conduct a week-long seminar, and he'd totally spin your mind. You'd have such an overload of information, but the only thing is he's hard to understand. He doesn't try to, but he talks above people. He's just too lofty, but he gets information out. But he knows about these kinds of checks and these kind of bonds. So anyways, we even talked to him, and he's in the States. So that's how we were talking on the phone, and I said we got to have a bond. Like Gene Keating did it. I got to have a bond, but I can't write it from here because they don't give you nothing. I mean, you have a hard enough time even getting a pen and proper paper. So we spent hours on the phone styling the thing, and I had people that properly formatted it. And another fellow who's a forensic accountant, in fact, a friend of mine, he brought it to the jail. And since he's a paralegal, or at least of sorts he is, they let him in because they don't let just anybody in. You just can't go to jail and say, I want to see so-and-so. No, that just don't happen. At least not in Saskatchewan. They're real tough here. So they let him in. And he had several copies of this bond that I looked at carefully, and I was taken out down to this other common area, the admittance area. And I looked at the thing and asked for a blue ink pen, signed it, and used a stamp pad and a thumbprint and put the thumbprint on it and several copies, and he took them all. And these guards are looking with their furrowed faces, and they're scowling and wondering, what is this? What's going on here? Who are you really? Well, he's just he's a paralegal, and he's my legal assistant, I guess, or always acting as attorney. Because you're allowed to have, some legal assistance. Well, legal counsel, I guess is the proper word. So they let him come in, but only once. They wouldn't let him come in a second time, but only once was enough. He got these done, and we faxed one to the court. That was in July of 2003. Faxed it to the court, and then he sent a hard copy to follow. And I had made mention of it in the court that morning because I never had it with me, but I said, the bond has been faxed. You'll have received it by now, and a hard copy will be following, and it's to settle these accounts. Well, they thought I was just a crazy man talking, but that's what they had to let on. They can't let a courtroom full of people understand that conversation because they wouldn't, and they'd wonder, well, what's happening? Can we all do that? So they just belittle you and demean you, and they're all after me to sit down and shut up. Of course I wouldn't. And I was probably most belligerent in those days. I've mellowed some, I suppose, by now. But so they had it, and I wonder what the heck that didn't go very far, did it? I didn't know it did because I'm not getting the reverberations of it. But then another court case about a month later, because they took my case and they divided it up, and several judges handled chunks of it. So a second judge, a month later, in August, I guess it was, or early September, he said one morning when the courtroom was empty, there was just the prosecutor, the cop, the clerk, and the judge and me. He said, Mr. Leis, you had previously, and he just stopped the prosecutor dead in his tracks around 10 o'clock in the morning. You had previously made mention of a bond, and I'm sitting there non-participating in their kangaroo court, which was...
Wait, who said that? Who said this, the judge or the prosecutor?
The judge. I could give you the judge's name. The prosecutor would not. They're there to prosecute you. He gets paid to prosecute you. And the judge cut him off in midstream, and he started talking about this bond. And I just sat there, because he called me Mr. Leis, and I'm not Mr. Anybody. I'm not Mr. In Between. I'm not Mr. Clean. I'm not Mr. Anybody. I have a name, and unless you call me by my name, I'm not going to talk to you. But he's looking at me. And we played this game for days. This is it appears you're looking at me when you're talking. Are you meaning me? Yes, I'm talking to you. And he'd roll his eye back, and we'd play this game daily. And I didn't really respond. And he said, very well then, we'll leave this topic of the bond and go on, back to the prosecutor. And then I sat up in my chair and says, sir, did I hear you say something about a bond? Yes, I did. Now he's listening to me. Did I hear you say that a bond that I had tendered for payment had offset some liabilities? You could say that. Now he's being very coy. He's being very elusive. You could say that. He wouldn't give me direct answers. So I was being careful to act as a creditor. Siobhan, we've talked about this. Always ask questions. I would never want to answer him. I'd always turn everything into a question. I knew that back in 2003. I didn't know much. I knew that. I was studying some Victoria Joy in there, and I had some information of hers that I was reading. So I knew that I got to try to always ask questions and remain as a creditor. So did I hear you say something about a bond? Did I hear you say something that a bond had been tendered that had offset some liability? Well, you could say that. Okay. So I just took my time and had lots of it. I says, would it be fair to say then that if there's any other outstanding accounts or liabilities, they said, well, you say that, Mr. Leis, do you mean charges? I says, yes. Oh, okay. So, Siobhan, there's your answer. Charges are accounts. He knew that. He knew that. They're liabilities.
And what was your question? What was your question to him?
My question was
liabilities.
Would it be fair to say then, if there are any other outstanding liabilities, there must be because I'm still in court, right? If there wasn't, I'd be already at home. So the bond that I'd given a month ago obviously wasn't for quite enough. They wanted more. So I asked the question, would it be fair to say that if there are any other outstanding liabilities, that another bond can be tendered to settle this? You say that, Mr. Leis. That's how he'd answer me. You think he'd say, well, yes, no, or whatever. But you see, you could say that. Or, what was the other famous line? Or you might. Or that's up to you. That's up to you. He'd say, yeah, that's up to you. You could say that, or that's up to you. Like to say yes or to say no, or to call it however I liked it, right? So if the court doesn't answer, we talked about this too. Let the record show the answer is yes, or let the record show the answer is no. So if it's up to me, all right, I'll tell you how it is. He was treating me like a creditor. But of course he had this creditor in jail, which is not good. I didn't think. But it was a learning curve. So I was quiet. And I just sat down for a minute, and I spoke up and I said, so would it be fair to say that another bond could be tendered?
Wait, let me get this straight, though. So you're like negotiate, like the judge is almost like negotiating with you.
Yes. Like you phone or a car or a tractor. Mm-hmm.
Slyly telling you that if you give us more credit, we will settle this up with you.
Yes. 10 times yes. And I was almost in shock the way he's talking about this. And this isn't anything like any other court case I've ever heard of or seen. Sure not like the stuff on TV. For sure not. The TV's for brainwashing. This is real time in a court, provincial court of Saskatchewan. So he knew that I had tendered a bond to a judge in July. This was in August, and he was wanting one too. And so I said, so would it be unfair to say that another bond could be tendered in an amount not much unlike the first one? Like I'm trying to be elusive and coy too, right? He said, that will be up to you, Mr. Leis.
And how much was, I don't know, can you say how much the first one was for, or give us a roundabout?
$75 million. $75 million. He wanted one like that too. So I sat down and said, well, I said, sir, he wasn't my honor. Only God I honor. I don't stand for these goons. I don't sit for them. I do exactly what I like. I stand, I sit. If I need a washroom break, I just do whatever I need to do. And they don't like that because they like to be honored. But I says, well, sir, you've heard me ask numerous times, this man over here, or this prosecutor over here, sometimes I talk to him even more condescendingly than that. I've asked many times what the amount of these outstanding liabilities are. He'd never tell me.
Now why wouldn't he tell you, Stu? Why wouldn't he tell you?
I guess they just want the number to be elusive and large and unknown so they can just lock you up for a long time. But really, there's got to be accounting. behind the scenes, if you were to go through access or freedom of information, you could find out exactly what every court charge is. And it might be $3 million, it might be $30 million, it might be $50 million. There's an amount. Every charge has an amount. So they can't just be amountless. They got to have an amount. And there was, that particular day, there was 14 or 16 charges yet, or 14 or 16 accounts. So I said, what's the number of them? I need to know. He said, well, you go back up to your hotel tonight. He called it a hotel. Yeah, funny. And you can think about that amount. And if you have trouble, I'm sure you could ask the clerk tomorrow, and she'd be more than willing to help you. I said, well, don't that beat all? Now here the clerk would help me figure this out. Well, how about just tell me now? But they're not going to tell me because they wanted me to just broadband it and make another bond for another $75 million.
Wow.
Why would you tell me there's only $45 million left, or 30, or 20, or 10, or only $200 left? I don't know, whatever. But they wanted another $75 million, so he was going to leave it to my imagination. It's up to me to write another one for $75 million, which eventually I did about a week and a half later. And they were waiting for it because this court went on for about 3 weeks. There's every day, just like going to the office, and every night go back up to the correctional center. You know, pretty soon life is normal, and you don't even mind it. You know where you're going at 5 o'clock. Make sure I'm not late for supper, and I never was. So, and then I come back to court a few days later. He says, "Oh, Mr. Leis, have you got something for the court that you wish to file?" Something empty-handed, and then they just continue on with court. And just their rhetoric and it's just garbage. It's kangaroo court, and I wouldn't have any part of it. I didn't want to cross-examine witnesses. The only question I ever asked any witnesses is, do you have a claim against me? No, I have no claim against you. Do you know anyone that has a claim against me? No, I don't have a clue who what are you talking about? What do you mean claim? They didn't know what claim was. I said, okay, thank you. If I've harmed you in any way, I ask for your forgiveness. Well, you have it, but you didn't harm me. So that I had no injured parties, ever, never. That I had of 35 in a row witnesses. Nobody had a claim against me. So no claim, no case. But they couldn't let this thing just drop like that.
And that's the crux of it, right? That's really what we're dealing with. Is when there's no claim, there's no case. So unless we injure somebody or we harm somebody's life or property,
liberty or property,
yeah, then there's a valid claim, one living being against another living being. Like, hey, you stole from my yard. Yeah, right. These are things that need to be kept in check. It's just normal ways to have harmony, but everything else is, like you said, kangaroo court, de facto court, lies. Dave, is that you?
No, that's me because I've just added Chris Vortex to the conversation.
Okay, cool. We have somebody who's on the conversation?
Yeah.
Another?
Chris.
Hey. Hello. I'm in the UK. I haven't really slept, and then I tuned in. And, yeah. Hello.
Hi, Chris. Nice to meet you.
You too. How long have you been listening?
Say again?
How long have you been listening, sir?
Listening to...
Are you just doing your own show now, or have you been listening to the United We Win very long?
She is the host for this particular segment.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's good.
Do you have any questions for us, Chris?
I'll think of one maybe. I'm just going to plug in my mic.
Oh, okay.
But carry on for now.
Okay. So you're just setting yourself up. Chris, you'll come back to us. I want Stu to just tell us the rest of the story, and then let's all three of us talk. So, Stu, where did we leave off? So this was the second bond that they were being very, very elusive about, and that you realized that they just wanted like a huge number again. And so
it was up to me to decide. So I said, okay, well, if this man won't tell me what the amount is, I'll have to just figure it out myself. And he says, I'm sure you will, he said. And I got transcripts of all this. I got a stack of transcripts that would have cost over $8,000. But since I was incarcerated, I got them for nothing. So it's all in there. It's all on transcripts. So I'm not making nothing up that can't be proven by their own transcripts. Anyway, so I come to court several days later because it lasted like 3 weeks, and he'd say, "Oh, Mr. Leis, have you got something for us this morning that you wish to file?" He'd be looking not at me but at my hand, if I'm carrying something, and I wouldn't have anything. He'd be disappointed. "Oh, okay, well, maybe tomorrow." So then one day I finally came in with the big brown envelope, and he says, "Oh, Mr. Leis, have you got something you wish to file?" It's like he was like a kid waiting for a chocolate bar.
Wow.
I said, "Well, I'm not too sure. I got something here. I'll decide if I'm going to file it today or not." And I'd play him a bit, make him wait. And throughout the day, we got talking about it then, and I said, "Well, in fact, I had prepared something that I may wish to file." And he had me hand it to the clerk, and the clerk handed it to him, and he turned his chair and put his feet up on the desk, flipped his glasses up onto his forehead and started reading it, and nodding his head, and then he handed it to the clerk. She handed it to the prosecutor and this top cop, and they put their heads together and looked at it, and they gave a unanimous nod, and they handed it back to the clerk, and that was another bond. And then he says, "Well, I'll just have you know that this didn't do your case one iota of good." And I says, "Really? Well, it didn't do it any good, then I want it back." "Mr. Leis, are you telling the court that you just filed something, now you wish to retract it?" Says, "That's exactly what I'm saying. It's got value to me. If it has no value to you, then I want it back right now." And I didn't get it back. He closed the case for the day and walked off the bench. And I was hauled back to the jail. So they kept it. But he's trying to tell me, trying to fool me to thinking that it had no bearing. Oh, it had bearing, all right. I didn't know that. I mean, they keep it in a state of unknowing and confusion. And then this was late September at that time already. And then I had a bail hearing in December, a couple months later. And at the bail hearing, this was a higher court, a Queen's Bench court. The first thing the judge said was to the prosecutor, "Why has Mr. Leis been in here this long a time? Why hasn't this bail hearing been had already a long time ago and he'd be out of here?" So he's ragging on the prosecutor for keeping in for so long. But they had to deal with that bond. They had to send it to where it had to go. It turned out I found out where it went. But by that time, by the time the bail hearing happened, it was getting there. I think it was 23rd of December. Suddenly, I was in way too long. Why hasn't he been released? Why has this bail hearing been dealt with and he was out here already? Because I bonded my way out, but I didn't know that. Here, I'm even thinking that my bonds are worthless. So I got out December 23rd and came home to a pile of mail 9 months thick.
Oh, man.
And on the very top of it was a letter from the Minister of Finance federally from Ottawa. And I opened it. Here he's thanking me for the bond. The Federal Minister of Finance, Ralph Goodale, thanking me for the bond and referring to it by its postal registration number. There's no mistake about it. And said that it was sent to the Provincial Treasury to whom it was written to. Paid to the order of the Provincial Treasury for Saskatchewan. So it got to Ottawa, to the big wig, Minister of Finance, and they are able to monetize it. They can. Your signature's worth, that is the gold. And then he, by way of transfer payments, sent it to the province of Saskatchewan. That's where it was supposed to go. And then several months later, different friends of mine phoned me and says, "You wouldn't believe what we heard in the news." I said, "What?" "We heard that a news item that the Saskatchewan Treasury said there was an unexplained amount of money come into the Treasury for $150 million.
This is the part that I just love, because this is just like the icing on the cake. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, totally. I said, "No, it couldn't be." And I just dismissed it. And then I heard it from another friend, and they're miles and miles apart. He says, "You know that those bonds that you wrote must have got to Saskatchewan because you announced it in the news." I said, "What do you mean announced it in the news?" "Now I'm listening." He said, "Well, denounce it. There's an unexplained amount hit the Provincial Treasury for Saskatchewan for $150 million. Like, that's enough to build some roads.
And that's what they did. Is that what they started doing?
Well, I guess there's road repair going on all the time. I mean, they didn't tell me that this is Stewart's section of road. I'm not saying it ever was. But something happened. They used it. I mean, that's not exactly, pocket change. That's a bunch of money. I mean, and the Treasury of Saskatchewan's far, far bigger than that. I mean, we're the potash king here in pretty much in the world, so they sell lots of potash. But this was from
a farmer from Saskatchewan in jail cell number 15 that furnished them that kind of funds. I won't say money, loot, whatever, but furnished that kind of funds. And I'm sure they haven't forgot that ever since, but it can be done. And I realized that that's why it took a bit of a time from that early October date that I give that bond to December 23rd. It had to go to Ottawa. So since I was out of jail waiting trial, of course, the trial still came, but at least I was out, I went back to the court and said, I want to check the file here. So I took 2 witnesses with me to the court clerk and said, I want to look at the file. I'm looking for something. I didn't tell her what I'm looking for. And the file was like 8 inches thick. And I looked through there, and there was no bonds. Well, whatever's put in that court file better be there, right? That's evidence. You can't tamper with that. They're missing. So how can they be in the file and not be tampered with? And at the same time, they're missing because they were sent off to be spent.
And they were accepted.
They were accepted. So I asked the clerk. I even knew her first name. I mean, we were a first name basis. I call her by her first name. I won't even say it. But I said, so where's? Because she was the clerk in the courtroom during that whole time. I said, so where's those bonds? Well, Jane. Jane, no. She says, what bonds? Can you imagine that? What bonds? I said,
wow.
You remember those bonds? You saw me present them. You took them. You handed them to the judge. I said, don't play games with me. Where are they? Well, maybe they're in the evidence file. I said, well, go get it, please. So she comes back in 5 minutes, the evidence file. We look through it. It's even thicker. They're not in there either. She said, are you sure you did that at this court, at the Queen's Bench Court across? He says, no, I'm real sure it was done at this court. So she's playing games with me. But maybe, are you mistaken that you did it to a different court? Well, I don't know where they are. So she said, well, so I started to warn her. I says, look, if those are put in this file and they're not here, then someone's tampering the evidence now. Now they're kind of getting worried. But really, I intend them to be spent, so they had to disappear from the file. But the fact that they were gone from the file was proof that they were actually sent off somewhere to be spent or monetized because they weren't in the file. And everything has got to be in that file, and it wasn't. So then she says, well, now she's getting a bit more serious and more concerned. She says, I don't know where they are. We'll need some time. This was about a Tuesday. It was early week. She says, could we have till Friday to find them? And I thought, well, isn't that something? Here's the clerk of the court asking me for time to find something. It's kind of like when the court says you owe them, $100 fine. Do you need time to pay? Where you ask for time, the big time to pay the fine. Here, they're asking me for time. The shoes on the other foot here now. They're the debtor. I'm the creditor. I felt like the creditor. Mm-hmm. I furnished a solution, and they can't find it. They're asking me for till Friday to find it. Well, Friday at about 10 to 5, I get a phone call to my house here saying, Mr. Leis, we can't find those things you're talking about. Would you give us to the end of the month? And I says, well, whatever. I've been looking for them for about a year and a half now. I guess what's another month or so. So I give them another month to look for them. They must really be lost. They got archives maybe in the downstairs basement someplace. She says, we're going to look some more. Well, a month went by, and it wasn't even quite by. About 3 weeks about, she phoned back. We don't know where they are. She hung up the phone. Well, I know where they are. Ralph Goodell got them. And now the province of Saskatchewan has them. So
wow.
I knew where they were before I asked, but
Stu, there was reports of the county or the province, whatever it is, coming into the province, unexplained amount of a lot of money, basically, is what reports were flying around.
And I never heard these personally, but about 3 or 4 of my other friends, because I have quite a network of people that we talk on these levels with. And
that's great. I'm trying to build that where I live. I'm trying to build that community where I am because that's really important.
You're now one of my people, Siobhan, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, at least we're long distance, but we are. Yeah. Yep.
So someone heard that, or several people heard that, and they phoned right away, and they knew I should probably know that, and I didn't know it, but they said, that's got to be your bonds, because we're trying to piece this together and make some kind of logic out of it too. So can a bond pay for a court case? Yes, absolutely it can. Was that enough? Maybe it wasn't even enough. Maybe because I had to go back to court, a year later, for another ending portion of the trial. If the bond might have been maybe, who knows, twice or 5 times that amount, maybe they wouldn't even been in court. So this is the thing I'm still wondering. It sure got me out at the time because they were looking to keep me in there for a very long time. I met people in there that were in remand waiting for trial for 15 months, and no time even coming soon. I mean, they can keep you there for a heck of a long time before even trial. Like, what's with speedy trial? What's with unlawful detainment and until, I mean, you're locked up and considered guilty until proven innocent. What about our Charter of Rights or Bill of Rights? I mean, this flies in the face of all that.
Yeah.
You're guilty until proven innocent because these are admiralty courts. Everything changes in admiralty court. They're not common law courts. So over the course of the last few years, I had to learn all these terms. What's admiralty court? You know, what's really going on in here? And in admiralty, that's where these. That's right. That's why these affidavits of negative averment work so well, because they're admiralty courts.
Negative averment is what, like throwing the ball in their court, like prove to me that evidence exists to the contrary, right? So I state my claim, I state what I'm declaring. Let's say, and I'm not a person, vessel, fiction, corporation, whatever, and I believe no evidence exists to the contrary. Is that like an example of negative averment?
Yes. Well, I never saw that. That's a negative. I never saw that.
I have not seen evidence to the contrary.
I have no evidence to see that this is the case. I mean, whatever the situation is, you can make a sentence or a statement in the negative, and they have to. Averment simply means to aver is to say, to state. So you make a negative statement that they can't prove. It's impossible to prove a negative. You can't do it. So they try to do that.
Give me an example. Give me like an example or two. What would be two statements?
I believe that my name is the result or beneficiary of the Cesta K Trust, and I believe that no evidence to the contrary exists. Well, now they have to prove to you that there's no Cesta K Trust and that you're not the beneficiary of it.
Okay.
You know, they can't do that. And then if you didn't put a time frame on, it would go nowhere. But you got to give them a time frame and get them into default, and that's the very worst position that they can be in, is to be in default, because that's dishonorable. And then they're left without any claim once they go into default. They lose their claim. So unless we murder someone, we can't do that. Now, this shouldn't work or can't work. But in any of these other victimless type situations, which they call crimes, which if it's victimless is no crime at all. This system, I believe, can work and vindicate you and get your remedy, which is the process of an affidavit, their non-response. The affidavit necessarily has to be by way of negative averment, and non-response, and then after a few more days, second attempt to offer them, and they won't respond again. Now they're into default. Like we have opportunity to cure. We always give them. We advance forgiveness, right? We're being kind to the neighbor, to the as much as you possibly can. So in order to get mercy, you have to. It's
trying to keep peace and harmony with our our fellow
your brother,
brother and sisters. Yeah.
If we don't give them one chance, we give them 2 chances, and they won't respond again. If they couldn't the first time, they sure can't the second time. So then we note them in default, and we use one of their people to do it, which is a notary, which is a liaison between us, the private, and them, the public. And he's a credible position that they recognize. They may not believe you, but they believe their notary. So we use everything by way of notary. We send it by way of registered mail. Now we've invoked the post office as another credible witness, and you can prove service that they received it, that they signed for it, and they cannot get out from under this process that we're doing, because it's their process used against them, and it's their worst nemesis. They can't deal with it. So you can administer yourself out of any situation, and walk away. We had a friend here locally that was charged with some hunting violation. And he didn't hurt nobody. I mean, he didn't even hurt the animal. But there was a conservation officer hiding around the bush, and came out, and as he's getting back in his truck, and he charged him with a whole bunch of things like loaded gun and somebody else's property, and he was only going after a coyote or something to get it off his property, whatever. And they charged him, but they just trump up all his charges, and had to go to court, and he didn't go. His wife went instead because he had better things to do, and he didn't like court, as most of us don't. So then there's a warrant for his arrest. So we had to I helped her do some fancy paperwork. It's like 2 years ago. And the long and the short of it is that they never did find him, and now the warrant's all gone. Everything's gone. She went to court when they had to instead of him as power of attorney, but the paperwork stuck. We talk SSK Trust, we talk beneficiary. I believe that I'm the beneficiary, and there's no evidence to the contrary. We believe that this conservation officer is the trustee. And or a negative vermin would be, I believe that I am not the trustee. That's the real perfect negative vermin. I believe that I am not. I verily believe. See, they can't ever charge you for your beliefs. You could believe to be a Muslim or a Buddha, or you could believe to be a Rough Rider fan, or whatever you want to believe. Nobody can charge you for that, or charge you for perjury or for lying when you say, I verily believe this to be the case. I verily believe that I'm not the trustee of the SSK Trust, and I believe that there's no evidence to the contrary that exists. Well, now they've got to come back and prove that you are the trustee, and it's utterly impossible, completely impossible. That's a perfect negative vermin. I'm not the trustee. I believe that I have not broken any laws.
Right.
Of course not, because laws are laws. Statutes are not laws. Codes, rules, regulations are not laws. Laws, law. Laws, God's laws. Didn't break one. He didn't break one. So, there again, they couldn't prove that. So we had 10 or 15 points written up pretty quick and sent to them with 20-day response time, and they didn't. And my friend had that court in a default situation real quickly. And they scream and yell. Like when they scream and yell, you hit a hot button. For sure
Yes.
they did, because if they haven't got problems, they easily handle you. They don't have to get mad to handle you. When they're mad, you've hit a nerve, and they got a problem.
Right.
So they have to threaten you, and contempt of court, and contempt of court's not hard to handle either. If they say, well, sit down or shut up or retract this paperwork, or we'll hold you in contempt of court. Oh, really? That's the one of the best responses. Oh, really? Would that be criminal contempt or civil contempt? Well, now the wind just got kicked out of their sails again, because it's got to be one of those two. Which one? Criminal contempt. Oh, really? Well, if it's criminal contempt,
where's the injured
then
party?
what law is broke? Who makes the claim and who's the injured party? Well, it's civil contempt. The province of Saskatchewan's injured. Oh, really? Province of Saskatchewan's injured. Well, could you please bring them in here? All million people? Yes, all million people.
Yeah. Which one of them?
Which one of them? All of them. Or if it's civil, it usually relates to contract. Well, I don't remember signing any contract with you, because civil relates to contract. Criminal relates to injury. So I don't remember being in contract with you. So I believe no contract exists.
Bring
the contract. Take that out of him too. Bring the contract or bring the injured party. Take your pick. Which one is it? But do one, or get off that high horse of contempt of court. They use that as a scare tactic. The only ones that can really be in contempt of court are officers of the court, not us. We're not officers.
Can I just say something that I've heard? Hello?
Hello.
Thanks. Hey, I've heard that when you're told you have the right to remain silent, yada yada, it's an invitation to state this piece of law, and I don't have it in front of me, and I can't remember what it is, but I heard quite recently that there's only 3 pieces of law that you need to really remember. Just state this piece of law. I don't know if it's called legislation or whatever. And then also to remember when they say, do you understand, of course, to say no. And then there's another one that you say in court, and then there's another one. I can't remember when you say that, but I've recently heard that to protect your common law rights, there's only 3 pieces of law that you need to remember ever. Don't know if you've heard of that.
I'm not sure what those 3 pieces of law would be. What I'm afraid of by remaining silent is that your silence is your consent. So that's always the danger. And if you're going to remain silent, you better say something. The something should be at least, I do not consent. If you say nothing, then they can have you consenting. Yeah. If you don't say no, you just said yes.
But I heard recently that there's a piece of, it's an invitation to state this piece of law, but yeah.
Well, everything is, right? From what I've been learning, everything is an offer for contract. Yes. Everything is an offer to contract with you.
An invitation,
and it's an invitation, exactly, to get you to agree to things that you don't know that you're agreeing to. And so, and then, you can look at it like an invitation. Absolutely.
You could say, I accept your invitation, or conditionally, but here's my terms and conditions. Something like that. So if you don't accept the invitation, right away you look like you're being obstinate or dishonorable, which is what a debtor would do. So we like to say that, as honorable men and women, as creditors, we accept all offers. But there may be conditions or stipulations, like, may I pour you a coffee? Well, yes, you can. May I pour cream in your coffee? Well, I'll take my coffee without cream, thank you. I mean, you're not being dishonorable. So that's we have to always kind of think like that. Accept all offers, but you can return the offer with conditions, and that's in commerce. That's honorable. So by saying nothing, that's how their commercial system works in Admiralty course. By saying nothing, you just acquiesced. So there's I don't know what 3 things you're exactly meaning. I'd like to hear them. They may well be valid, but not knowing that, I always, err on the side of caution and make sure that I say something like, I don't understand what you're telling me, but I don't consent. Like, say something. Otherwise, it goes on the record. It's nothing, because the record won't show nodding your head or silence. You got to say something.
Right. Because
I heard that if you state this piece of law, then it means that you write the rules, not them. And I don't have it in front of me, and I've only heard this recently.
But you haven't got it there with you?
I don't. But if I did find it, I know who to contact for it. And I think it's actually a very recent thing that it's been worked out in this country, in the UK. People have been working on this behind the scenes, and I've seen people in person say that they've worked this out, and they just want to put this in practice and get it out there.
All right. Well, Chris, when you have it to share with us, we would definitely love to go over it and talk about it. So if you can dig it up, I think we'll probably, we may still be on air for a little while. So if you can dig it up and share what it is.
Online. But I can give you a video of the guy who. It's not that particular meeting, but apparently it's going to be on YouTube at some point.
All right. So when you got it, just share it with us. I would love to check it out.
Okay.
Oh, this is a work in progress. I mean, there's people like us that are always finding more answers. Like, understand this: the court, who mostly are Masons, by the way, they've been at this for many centuries, and they just keep on perfecting it and building it and fleecing us, on a daily basis. And here, there's a few people like Siobhan and you and I and a few others like Gene Keating or whoever I deal with, some of my gurus. We're just finding this out in our little short lifetime. They've been perfecting this for decades or centuries before that, so they're still way ahead of us. But I think the answer is probably more simple than we think it is.
we try to complicate things. Lawyers like to complicate things because they like to litigate. The more they litigate, the more they get paid. And especially if you got a lawyer, the other side has a lawyer, they can keep at this till someone's broke. And in the case of O.J. Simpson, it was like $14 million later. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah. So they're invested in keeping controversy going.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what this is keeping the controversy going, and us as thinking
they don't
of
want to
ourselves
find
right. They're not really
they don't want
looking
to
for
find
resolution.
remedy.
Yeah.
No, they're not. They're not, because then it's over.
When we say we want to be sovereign, like as honorable men and women, then we have to be willing to have resolution. And so, as creditors, that's why we extend credit. And people like you write bonds for $75 million and extend the credit, and then they take it and use it. So it's quite fascinating. It really is just, it's really mind-blowing in a lot of ways because, most of us growing up have not been taught how powerful we are. And this, to me, is just really a testament to how we do, like Chris was saying, we write the law for ourselves. We write how our life is going to go, and maybe it takes a little time to manifest, right? Stu, like you wrote the bond, but you didn't come back out to the court to see the judge till a few months later. But when you did, they were like, "Why was he in there so long?" And so maybe things don't happen right away, but it seems like if we're true to our convictions in the moment of what really resonates for us, then, amazing things can happen.
That's right. You got to sometimes be patient and wait, and things will work out. At the same time, always be honorable. At the same time, love your neighbor. At the same time, don't hate your enemies. Like, that just compounds to the bad side. And even inside of jail, you can make a lot of friends and be a model prisoner or whatever. And I tried to do that too. I had
I cringe.
Everyone speak. Yeah, I heard nobody speak anything but well of me, and they knew that I was obstinate. Like Schwan said, don't sign things, and no, I didn't sign things. I wouldn't sit down on that orange chair and get my picture took, and so they just haul you off to the worst notorious gang range, and I thrived there. What do you do to you? I mean, they take you to the worst hellhole gang range, and I still survive because there's good rangers and bad rangers. There's rangers for white people, and there's mixed kinds for who that everything's there of the gang warriors, and they threw me in there, and I still survived. So then what are they going to do? They don't know what to do with it because that's their jail. That's the worst they got, and I survived it. And I made friends and gained some respect, but you can't act and talk like them and like the rest of them and live like them. You can rise above all that. It's a society. They throw you in jail. It's a society, and people live there. It's a whole different society. You have neighbors and you have barter systems, and it's a different lifestyle than I was used to. But it's a lifestyle. It's like the Lord of the Flies, that one movie.
Yeah.
These kids are on this island. I mean, you will make some form of government in there. And in fact, while I was in there, after a few months, I was elected the range rep. I thought, what the heck is that? But that's what they wanted me to be. They wanted me to be the go-between between all the guys in the range. There's 30, 35 guys, and the guards. It's like a union leader, I suppose. Union steward or whatever they call them. I'm not much on unions, but I was the range rep because they knew that there was someone that could think clearly, and none of them guys could. So he needed to have certain things, and I was able to get those things, like little things, like hair cutting tools. The things that you take for granted out here, you don't take for granted in there. Or
this is true. Yeah.
That's just one example. There's a better TV or something like that, or some people needed 2 mattresses because they had aching bad backs or something.
I guess we adapt because we're amazing that way. We can adapt. I mean, but it's definitely not my preference. I love being where I am.
No, that's not a place to live.
So let's fast forward a little bit to the future. So now how has it been viewed? So it's like you did you were experimenting, you were doing things, trying pretty incredible things that, I'm sorry, but require like courage and just commitment and belief and trust in yourself and a higher power. I mean, it really requires all of that. And so you did that. And you put your time in. And so I know you've manifested different now. So, like, how has the past few years of your life been?
Well, in a nutshell, peaceful. Very peaceful. Almost scary peaceful. To the point I'm wondering, well, when are they going to come and surround my house again for something that I haven't even done? But they haven't. I mean, I passed the cops on the streets of this town here and lots of times, and I've been even stopped on the highway, and they don't even want to stop I drive semi, like for our farm, and we haul our own grain. And this, I was stopped 2 years ago, and given an overweight ticket, but the truck was empty. It was empty coming home, having dumped, and I got an overweight ticket having been empty, which is crazy. That's never heard of. And I had a $2,960 ticket for empty truck. But I thought, whatever, I don't care. Well, I said, have it your way. So he looked for a slip of a load that was previously hauled. And I said, oh, is this what you want here? A load slip from the last load? Like it could have been earlier today, earlier this month, earlier this year, maybe 2 years ago, maybe the guy we bought the truck from, maybe the last owner. What's the last load you want? Because we just bought this truck not long ago. So he wanted the last slip. So I said, oh, is this what you want? So he said, yeah, that's what I want. Why didn't you give it to me first? So I said, oh, here it is. I didn't know what you wanted. Because the truck's empty. So I said, here's a slip. Go do whatever you want to do with it. Wrote me up a big fat ticket for putting $3,000 and then gave me a summons to appear in court for not complying with an officer's demands right away. And I said, gee, your officers, aren't you guys peace officers? Yeah, there's 2 of them. I said, well, has there been a breach of the peace here? Oh, they wouldn't answer. I says, not that I've seen, there hasn't been. So what is it you want to try and do? Well, we gotta, do our jobs. I said, well, whatever. I said, have it your way. I didn't care because I knew what I was going to do. So I took the tickets, I accepted them, I drove away, got on a load of grain. Within 3 days, I had the one ticket accepted for value, and I had converted it into a money order, because you can do that too, make a money order out of it, and sent that off to the Receiver General federally in Ottawa, and sent copies of it only to the local court. And so the ticket was dealt with. It was settled by my exemption. And then I had to go to court the one day, a month or 6 weeks later. So I went to court that day, and I asked the JP. There was no judge; it was a JP there, Justice of the Peace, which I thought was weird. First time I ever stood before a JP. And he said, "We're here to talk about these tickets." And I said, "Oh, whatever." So I have a question for you. I says, "Are you attempting to probate the estate of the decedent, Stuart Leis?" And he did a double take and didn't want to talk about it. He says, what? So I repeated it. He looked at the traffic cop who was the prosecutor.
Can you repeat it again? I want to jot it down.
Are you attempting to probate the estate of the decedent, which is the uppercase name, Stuart Leis? That's the tickets were written out to, the uppercase name. Right. And, of course, he wouldn't answer because he didn't know how to answer. I said, I'm the only beneficiary of that estate, and I don't consent to your jurisdiction. Well, he just absolutely was spellbound. And he turned to the prosecutor, the traffic cop, who still had his yellow, traffic cop jacket on and the way they dressed. And he turned to him and says, do you know what he said? He says, I don't know, Your Honor. He called him Your Honor. Then he looked at me for help. And I just looked at him and says, you better get legal advice. So it was my demeanor again. I was confident. I didn't care. I wasn't interested in playing their game. I told them exactly where the bear had crapped in the bush, and they didn't know what to do with it. And they said, we're going to have to hold this over to a real court day with a real judge. I says, well, whatever you want, I don't consent. I turned and walked out. Never, ever went back. Well, since then, I've been with that same semi, with grain trailers, through traffic stops. They waved me through. Like 5 more times it happened the last 2 years. And I'm wondering, well, what's with this? They got trucks stopped. They're writing up tickets left, right, and center, and they're waving me by. Can they recognize my Mack truck or what? What's going on here? I don't know. Someone please tell me. They're waving me by. Because a trucker's worst nightmare is always a regular traffic stop when they pull the trucks over, because they will cost you money, or what they think is money. They can cost me all they like. They know what they're going to get. And so now they either know the color of my Mack truck, or they know the license plate or something, because they wave me by. And they had traffic stops at our major one delivery point here in Saskatchewan from the east side and the north side. And we're hauling, a couple loads a day right from the combine during harvest to the elevator there. And it didn't matter if I went to the one direction or the alternate direction, there's traffic stops. And they waved me by. This was 5 times in 2 days. Like, that never happens. You don't pass traffic stops 5 times in 2 days and not get to third degree. They'll put their coveralls on, get on the creeper and go underneath and check your brakes and your air leaks and your axles, and they'll check everything. And they'll weigh you too. They have the portable scales. And I went by them 5 times in 2 days. I just don't understand, except that they didn't want to stop it. So anyways, all the things I've done over the years, I did by notice of understanding. Siobhan, you've seen that. I sent it out years ago, and I don't know what value it's garnered me. I don't know. Maybe some, maybe none, maybe a whole lot. But it's sure been quiet. But at the same time, we can't go out to breaking laws, and
No, exactly. No, this is not like a way out of.
No.
If we do something genuinely where it's like we're harming someone, or again, it's the same basic principle. It's like the golden rule: just you don't hurt anybody, do harm to no one. However we say it, that's so simple. It's so simple.
But they seem to quit hitting on me because they hit on you and they get money. They hit on you, they get money, and pretty soon they find out, oh, you're an easy payer. We'll hit on them some more, and then it'd be for.
I got a question for you from the chat room that somebody let's see, how he sold the traffic ticket and to whom. So I think somebody's wanting you to go back to the traffic ticket and what you did with it when you accepted it for value and you sent it to the Minister of Finance, yeah?
Receiver General, because Canada's bankrupt. That's what is a receiver, because that's the dead giveaway that we're a bankrupt nation.
So except for value would go to the receiver.
Yeah.
Except for when you accept for value.
Someone of sufficient authority, like the comptroller of the currency or the receiver general, somebody of sufficient authority and stature in the public, in the government departments, that knows how to do this. Someone knows how to do the set-off and adjustment and set that to zero. Someone knows. Some clerk or cashier at the bottom end won't know, but you send it to the top end, the CEO, the CFO, or the receiver general, they know. So I sent it to them, but I accepted for value, and I also converted it into a money order, which is another little trick we had learned. There's Jack Smith, I've talked to you about. He's down from Cleveland, I think, area. He does seminars, and I've been listening to him, and he says you convert them to a money order. And you basically take their ticket, you photocopy it, so that you've got 2, the original and the photocopy. And on the photocopy, you write money order across the top. Big black pen, black top marker, money order. Why? Because you can. Because the Bills of Exchange Act in Canada, anyways, allows that you can take this presentment and use it and use it or look at it as a bill or a note. So whatever suits your fancy the day. So I thought, well, how about a money order? And then I put on there, wherever there's blank area to write, I don't care what they wrote. Their writing is their writing. I don't care what it says. I write over top of theirs. I write in between it. I write in big black. I'll use red. I'll use whatever. Pay to the order of. That's a powerful word, the order of. The receiver general. Let the receiver general order it. He can order the money. Maybe he orders it from Sears catalog. I don't know. I don't care where. Pay to the order of the receiver general. He can order it. Order from the clerk of the court, order from the prime minister, order from, I don't care where, from Saudi Arabia, where they have lots of it. I don't care. And then I put this amount. In fact, I made it bigger. Like, don't be chintzy. I made it $500 bigger. Round it off. Some for their time. What do I care? Pay them, tip them.
Stu, what was it like for you? I got to ask you a question here. What was it like for you when you began to realize, like, holy shit, I can do this. Like, yeah, all this work, I can do this. Because it sets in, right? And
it's liberating. It's very liberating. So
yeah, I'm almost there, I'm almost there. I just got to sink into it more, but it's like, I can just see it's like, wow, it's that, so mind-blowing, and that you have experience with it, working and being successful with these things is just, it's very inspiring,
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always work like you'd think it would work. I mean, I don't want people to take this information and go nuts with it because it will do it wrong.
No. Me neither.
You can't do that. It took many years, like 15 years or so, and it took jail. It took trial and error. It took me writing those checks that it did. It took me trying lots of things. At the same time, I'm a farmer. I'm just a farmer. I mean, we're salt of the earth people. We just work hard. I mean, we grow wheat. You know, we're not fancy people. I'm not a New York Wall Street broker, but we learned these things because we have this innate desire to be free and you know, I guess when things start to crumble down around you and you find yourself in maybe financial straits. And I remember my mother saying one time, everything seemed to happen at once. We had Revenue Canada on us. We had poor grain prices resulting, so poor income, and we weren't able to make payments, and the bank was looking to take land away, and everything starts crashing down at once. And my mother said, she was crying, and she said, somebody has to do something. Well, who's going to do it? My aged father? Who's going to do it? My younger brothers? I mean, who's going to do it? There's no one you can go to. You can't go run to your lawyer because he's part of the problem usually. You can't go to your accountant because they're chartered by Revenue Canada. They'll just say, well, you got to pay your taxes and pay your accounts. You can't go to the preacher because they were no help whatsoever. You can't go anywhere. You have a counselor of what kind? Who could tell you anything? I had to find these things out by talking with other people like myself, and then they get put in touch with maybe a guru like Roger Alvick, or there's others like him. And I started learning things and piecing things together and figuring, well, okay, that means if I did this and this and this, maybe I could accomplish that. And I had to try it. And you know, people would say, well, it backfired on you, didn't it? I says, well, no, it didn't backfire. Have you ever fired a 10-gauge Magnum shotgun? It'll sit you on your butt. It's called recoil. It's not backfire, it's recoil. For every action, there's an opposite reaction of equal. And you start pulling some of these commercial stunts, and there's reaction. And that can be jail, it could be charges. They're trumped up, of course. They trumped up all they could, but I had to go through all that. Yeah. And, you know, they took their best shot. They tried to bankrupt us. I mean, if you sit in jail for 9 months, that goes... Anybody out there can look on the calendar and figure, well, that's pretty much most of a farming season, isn't it? Yeah, it sure is. But I had brothers at home and aged father at home that kept the farm going. We were able to keep the farm going in my absence. They tried real hard to bankrupt me because that's how they worried on make you a compliant slave, bankrupt you. Now you're a debtor. You come under the Bankruptcy Act and now you're a debtor. You're in the Salvation Army soup line. I mean, there's no more humbling, demeaning position than that. And they tried all of that. Well, it didn't happen. In fact, while I was in there, we actually flourished. Actually financially flourished, and I, you know, gained experience and whatever knowledge that I sometimes wish I didn't have. It boggles the mind, but I can't unknow something. Once I know something, I can't unknow it.
Can't go back.
Once I know something, I have to try it. And right. To my own demise, maybe I tried, but it wasn't so bad. Now I can look back and say, well, I did that, and they're still there, and I'm still here. You know, what did they do to me? They didn't kill me. I'm still here. And we're doing better now than we were in those years. But somebody had to do something, and by and large, and with the help of God, I'm sure that's how that all came. It works like it says in Romans, for we know that everything works out to the good of those that love and trust in God. That's one of my favorite Bible verses. We know everything works out to the good. It's not by accident. It's not lady luck. God's watching who His people are, and He works things out. And you can be in the worst series of circumstances, and He can still work it out. And I'm seeing that happened. I can see that exactly did happen.
I can see it in my situation too. I can see it in my situation too. You know.
If be blind and stupid not to.
Bailed out for $10,000. $10,000 for suspensions on a license.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous, Siobhan. I can't. Like in our country here, that wouldn't happen here. But we hear that, like in the States, they have larger penalties for things and larger bail amounts. And that same thing here would have been $500. As it happened to me, I know $500, not $10,000. That's severe. So there's got to be a way that we can get that back, and I think affidavits of negative vermin are part and parcel of it. Mm-hmm. And maybe some more action that's even stronger than that, but we'll let this thing run its course. Just sit tight for let the paperwork that you've done so far filter its way through and see what happens.
Let that simmer. Yeah, that's been an interesting process in itself. Writing out your own affidavits, writing out my own stuff, and I'm pulling from things I've seen on the internet. I'm pulling from, Stu's brain, and just kind of, boiling it down to what I want and what I like. And it feels good. It feels good to be declaring myself and my rights, that are important to me, and just making it very clear, and then doing it a negative averment, stating I believe there's no evidence to the contrary, and so show me if there is. And so you were just talking about God and how, things will work out, if we keep a certain level of trust in ourselves and in our God, and integrity in what we're doing. We don't want to be doing it for the wrong reasons, like to get from another. We don't have to get from another, because there's abundance. There really is. We don't have to get from somebody else to have.
No.
So
it's better to give than to receive. That's another principle too. But Roger Alvick used to tell us, and he was one of the gurus. And as far as writing a bond or writing a promissory note or writing closed account checks, he says these are powerful tools. He says, don't use them out of greed. Use them out of need. And he drove it into us. There's a whole classroom of us. I bet there's 30 of us, and we met with him a whole weekend and over the phone other times. So we had lots of meetings and lots of calculated, maneuvers that we studied before we started to use them. So we didn't just find an old checkbook once or know our account was empty, just keep it writing checks. No, it's way more serious than that. We went way deeper, and there's
that's why you did probably maybe more time than somebody would for like something smaller, maybe like me. I don't know, traffic. I don't think they could put me away for as long as they put you away, because you were writing closed checks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe they could. Maybe they could. I'm
sure they wouldn't. I'm sure they wouldn't. But with me,
right.
I guess I'm just
but you were playing some bigger games, my friend. You were sort of pioneering where, I don't think really, was anybody else doing that at your time when you were doing it? That of in your vicinity?
Some other people tried one or two, but they stopped.
Right.
But I wrote several dozen, and I had to find out more. I mean, you have to, if it's like doing a survey, you have to have a bigger drawing area to do a survey. You've got to survey at least 1,000 people, not just 5 people. That's not a survey. Right. You might have to survey 10,000 people. Like, what does Gallup poll do? They may survey thousands and thousands. You need if the survey isn't right, you do a bigger one. Next time you get a broader spectrum of people. So I had to do enough to do that. But we had some serious situations going. I wrote one man a check, and it was for a very large amount. $3 million, and he deposited in his local credit union. It's in there yet, still today. They can't get rid of it. It's a deposit, and he's got the deposit slip because it was monetized. He deposited, he got the deposit slip, it was put in, and then they realized that this check...
Wait, Stu, what did he deposit? He wrote a promissory note or a bond?
No,
what did he write?
No. I wrote somebody, a friend, a $3 million.
Okay.
We're just trying this. And a friend will never complain and say, "Hey, I got a bum check from so and so." I don't know, because we're too smart for that. So he deposited the check in a small credit union in Saskatchewan, and they treated him like he was the latest lottery millionaire. They were going to set him up with their best people, and they thought, well, this guy is obviously coming to some money. And they said, this is too large an amount. Like they looked at it and dealt with it as though it was absolutely the same kind of money as that they're all dealing with, which is all fiction, fiat, useless money anyways.
Which is what it is anyway, so we can make the same.
What it is anyway. And then he deposited, and he got the deposit slip. And then the next day they called him back in, and they wanted the deposit slip back, and he wouldn't give it to them. That made them a horrendous problem. They couldn't undo that. That deposit is as alive and well today
as if any lottery millionaire deposited that money in any bank at any time. It's the same thing. Only they close the account, but you can't close the account with funds in it. It don't work. They close it, they slammed it shut, they wouldn't allow them to write on it, but it's in there. So we just enriched a small town credit union in Saskatchewan by $3 million. And that just infuriated them because they don't know what to do with it. Their books don't balance. But they got it. It's a deposit. So that was the only one he ever deposited. He never wrote any, but he deposited that one, I guess. So we did this quite a few times. That's just one story. There was others. Oh, another one. I wrote to another friend. Yeah, I guess there's another story. And it was the same amount of money as well. And he deposited to a bank and they said, well, we don't really know what to do with it, but our investment side, I think it was TD Greenline or something. They have the investment side of it. They can handle it. He deposited it with them, and it earned a month's interest. It earned $900 interest for him. So, was it real? Yeah, it was real. It was real. It was really real. And then they closed it, but it earned him $900 interest. So we're playing with fire here. We have to be really responsible and
you were playing with fire. I don't think when really anybody was. Maybe you and a few other people, like you said. But in a way, like you and the people that I guess your teachers, like some of which would be like Winston Shrout, Jack Smith, Rice McLeod.
Rice McLeod, Winston Shrout. You said him. Yeah, and they all know each other too. By the way, Gene Keating, they all know each other, and so they said too that you got to be very careful. In fact, now actually, on another note, some of these I listened to Jack Smith, and I've talked to you about this Tony King, this pastor Tony King. Well, at his seminars, they got people now that are taking the stage at the seminar and saying that they've perfected the use of the closed account check. There's a way to do it now that works every time. So it's
an evolving process. And what I see about this is like when I first started coming into this knowledge, slightly, I thought I would find a way where it like works for everyone every time. Like I would just find out how to do it, and I would just do it. And that's like true to a certain point. But I'm seeing that it's really like unique to each individual. Each and every one of us we pull off each other, but we got to find our own way a little bit. So there is no one particular right way. There's definitely certain things I'm seeing that you want to have in place. Like if you want to, we don't want to be arguing subject matter. What we want to be doing is questioning authority and questioning where's the claim. And like that, we don't want to be buying into their story about us. We're not that fiction that they claim that we are. And so there's definitely certain mechanisms you want to.
If you argue subject matter, Siobhan, what you just said there, what happens is that you bring their lie to life.
Right. They summon us. They summon our spirit, and we give life to their fiction. Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start to ask for particulars about the case, like full disclosure or whatever, or start dealing with it, or cross-examining and dealing with it as a trustee would, which will put you into the territory of trustee decentor because you're dealing with the trust. As soon as you start doing that, you've given their whole scheme credibility. You brought their lie to life. So best just to say, well, I did this is back in 2003, to 35, I remember, was the amount, I guess, of Crown prosecutors' witnesses. Every single one, I depose them. Have you got a claim against me? Do you know anyone that has a claim against me? No. Every single one. Some said, I don't know, what do you mean claim? If you don't know what a claim is, then you don't have one.
Right.
And not one had a claim. So that's not giving their life. That's deposing them. And that's all on the record. Simple enough.
So if they want to play stupid, like what do you mean claim? Well, then if you don't know what that is, then you don't have one.
Then you couldn't have one, could you?
You can't possibly have one.
They sit there and shrug their shoulders. A shrug doesn't show up on the record, so let the record show that he had a claim against me. Move to dismiss, no case. I did that many times, but do what they're going to do. Give them enough rope to whatever, hang themselves. Every one of us, and this is, if we were to end this call at this point here, but we won't. But every one of us is absolutely going to be accountable someday on Judgment Day. Whether you believe it or not, I don't care. It's going to happen. It's not dependent upon you believing it. It's going to happen. We're going to be accountable for every act that we've done, everything we've said. So make them good. And if they've done things to hurt people like us, they're going to be accountable, because on those that have been given much authority, much is required. So, like the judge, for instance.
I'm with you on that. That's where I was saying before, where we don't have to take from them, even though yes, we could make claims against them, and people do. You can lean judges in their private capacity, right?
Capacity, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
So we can do that. Yeah, when they just like even kind of what I'm dealing with, like, it's kind of lying in the wind if I'm going to make a claim or not for certain things that were done to me unlawfully.
Keep them wondering if you're going to or not. I personally advise against it. You can, but you shouldn't. We're not supposed to really bring suit against our brother. If they're doing it to us, they'll be accountable. We'll rise above that. We're supposed to be overcomers. And that's where the peace comes from. When you overcome this and you have a world of peace that you didn't even think that you had coming. But if you're going to go and create strife by leaning them, and
so we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. We could do it. We could do it, but we don't have to.
You shouldn't. You could lead their bond, their pension, their bank accounts. You could get a private investigator to find where the bank accounts. You could lean their bank accounts and clean them out. But we shouldn't do that. That comes in under coveting. And I don't want what's not rightfully mine. Even though it's legally mine, it's not lawfully mine. You keep your stuff and leave me alone. I'll keep my stuff. And if you've done something wrong to me, you'll answer for it. I don't have to answer for doing anything to you.
That's just the basics. That's it. I think that's what most of us want. Is like, you kind of leave me alone. Let me do my thing. I'll leave you alone. You do your thing, and we don't, trespass on each other's whatever we're doing. As long as it's, we don't breach the peace and infringe on each other's lives. Very, very simple how we could be living, just simple principles, and that's where it's going. I see that's the direction it's going, and just that we're even having this conversation. Yeah, just the fact that we're having this conversation. Say again?
Just two words, don't trespass. You could sum it up there, don't trespass.
Right, it's really simple.
Cover everything.
And I want to, so in the context of we don't have to take from them to have, that's, to me, sounds in alignment with being the beneficiary, like how all of this is for the benefit of our experience, because we're all here temporarily, right? Like, we're all going to have an experience on this earth, and then we're going to be whatever. We won't be here the way we've known ourselves to be anymore. Yeah, so all of this is temporary and transient, so to me it makes sense that I'm the beneficiary of all of what is here, and I can be good to it. I'm just the beneficiary of it. I don't own anything. I can't take anything with me when I die. So the concept of ownership, it's like, it can only go so far in my head, because really everything belongs to whatever created it, the source of it all. So beneficiary makes sense to me. I'm here to use everything and enjoy it, respectfully, and that's it. And without obligation. Without obligation.
The Rockefellers even took that a step further. They coined a phrase, own nothing but control everything. They're the masters of foundations and trusts.
They know this well. So they would you say they make themselves the beneficiaries of the trust they create? Or their families?
Yes,
they continue in a family?
Yes, they could. Yes, they could. Yes, they could. And they can convolute the trust so difficult. In fact, if you read the Rockefeller files, which I've read about half of them, it's so convoluted that the author says it's impossible to decipher or discern how much they own and who owns what. They've got thousands of corporations and hundreds of foundations, and to try to follow the money to find where something is, like to determine ownership, it's impossible. You can study it all your life, you won't find it. It's so convoluted, but that's how masterminded that they've done it. So even they know that in the worldly sense that you don't own anything. They say you put it into trust that you really don't own anything. Then you could be judgment proof. If you're judgment-proof, there'd be nobody coming after you. Like, look at the homeless people in the street. What do they get charged with? Vagrancy? Or, like, what? I mean, you can't get no money out of them because they're begging for money. So they're kind of the epitome of judgment proof. Although I don't want to have to be that way.
They don't really arrest homeless people, right?
They don't.
I mean, maybe if the homeless person is like trespassing on private property or something like that, but other than that, they kind of
out of there. But
right.
They don't.
Right.
They don't all you off to jail.
They can't get anything. That's brilliant. Yeah.
IRS doesn't go after them because there's no tax, no income, no money. Like you're just wasting your time. They want to go after people if they say they can hear the cha-ching going, and they can get some. And once you start to pay, if you pay once, they'll come after you a second time and the third time because you're a payer. You're an easy mark. And boy, they figure that out real quick. Who pays? And I haven't been doing that for a very long time. We got to be on top of our game, guys.
We got to be on top of our game.
Yeah. And we pay extra taxes. But, every time you buy anything, right, from a stick of gum to a gallon of gas to everything we buy, there's tax. And on your booze, on your power and lights and telephone, there's tax. And that pays the infrastructure, the roads or the medical or the whatever. But the income tax doesn't pay any of that. If it did, I wouldn't mind paying, but we've found out that it doesn't. And right. So I just, I'm going to cut you off at the source, and I just won't pay. I don't care what. It's been 15 years. And they tried charges, they tried jail, they tried fines, they tried everything. They just give up. They got nothing.
Wow.
But it takes a while.
It takes a while. You have to know who you are, right? And you have to stay there. And And finally, when I wrote them the contract, they said, okay, I guess I could do this if you like me to. I'll do your work for you because it's not me. No, it's not my work. I'm doing your work for you because why should I have to sit down and labor over these forms that I don't know how to fill out? I don't know how to fill out, or have to hire an accountant to fill out. That's crazy. Why should I have to do that? It's your work. You guys made them. You fill them out, and I'll sign them if I like. If you want me to do your work for you, I guess I can. But here's my terms and conditions. And then I just really laid it on thick. It turned out it was millions. Here's my terms and conditions. To file. You want me to file? I'll file, but here's my price tag, my fee schedule. And I sent that to the chief prosecuting office, not Revenue Canada because they're nobody. They use the prosecutor to get their cases solved. Where'd you send it to? The chief? Who'd you send it to?
Of the Department of Justice, the prosecuting department, the ones that'll come after you anyways, right? So send it to them first. And copies to the court, so everyone knew. And had it notarized and given 28 days or 30 days to respond. They didn't. Now they're in default, and they know it. They got nowhere to go. It's been deathly quiet. That's been years.
Wow. So there it is again. One is to stand for themselves, and things are possible. We just got to, but like Stu said, we don't just run out and do crazy things and just go off of, hearing this one, interview and go try something that we're not prepared for, not prepared to study over and stand by. So it's something, we want to be diligent
better
with
research a bit more than that.
Mm-hmm. We have to be diligent about this study on this path because there will be challenges and we have to be able to rise to them. So, Dave, how are we doing on time here? Are we are we still good to go?
I'm fascinated. Don't stop now.
Well, I thought maybe you'd be asleep at the wheel by now.
I've been up here. I've been producing since 8 a.m. my time, Pacific time this morning. I'm still good to go, and I'm 71 years old.
Oh boy!
No joke.
You've heard it all by now, have you?
I haven't heard enough yet.
I know. That's how it goes, man. All right, so maybe
this is absolutely fascinating. And what's more fascinating is you verified it by living it. How often does that happen?
Well, if it doesn't happen, you're talking hearsay.
Exactly. I will let you two go back to it because
first-hand knowledge of whatever happened to me, and I'm not proud of any of it. Believe me, I'm not. Like it does your reputation severe damage, maybe your credit rating, and it causes strife in amongst the family in a small town. Like if you can fit into New York City or Boston way easier than the small town where I live because everyone knows you.
And that's enough years ago now. That's since the early 2000s. It's enough years that pretty much people have moved on. I mean, they talk about you today and they talk about somebody else tomorrow. But for a while there, it was very, I mean, uncomfortable. And you maybe my mind plays tricks. Maybe you just think they're thinking about you or talking behind your back. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But that's all behind now. But there was serious repercussions. That's one of their tactics. They'll print an article about you. You know, man convicted of whatever. Well, you look like some Clifford Olson. That's what they can paint you.
Yeah.
Like when Revenue Canada beats you, it's right away in the paper. Man, whatever. Because there was another one here just recently in the local news. Convicted of failing to file or tax whatever evasion. So they right away print that. But if you ever beat them like I did, boy, that's never printed.
Not a word.
I beat them one time in court, 17 minutes flat, and they didn't know what they should wind their butts or scratch their watches. They didn't know what to do. 17 minutes flat, and I had a friend in the courtroom timing it. He says, "I can't believe what just happened. 17 minutes is all over." And that was I had beat them on 2 counts of failing to file and 2 counts of disobeying a Queen's Bench court order to file. Like, it don't get worse than that. And it was over in 17 minutes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was 18. So the only way that could happen, that would not have been possible from the outside. It had to be from inside a jail because I had no fear. I knew where I was going.
What I'm finding, because I do a lot of shows with my Indigenous brothers and sisters, and what I'm finding is the English language is spoken here in America is such a construct of garbage.
Oh, wow. That's a whole new topic he's bringing up here, Siobhan.
Hang on a minute.
Yeah, language.
Then unless you know how to talk to them in their language and you try to use our language in their court, you're screwed.
Well, how about the language of correct sentence structure, communication, syntax, as authored by David Wynn Miller? Now they're screwed. Now the court's screwed.
Tell us a little bit about that, Stu.
Yeah,
if
go
you don't
ahead.
mind.
I want to hear this.
Dave.
Oh.
So go ahead. Yeah, this is really interesting stuff, too. I've watched a little bit of David Wynn Miller's work. You can find him on YouTube. Again, everybody, this is United We Win. We're going into some late-night hours. This is like the late-night lounge thing going on. We're talking some really interesting stuff. United We Win Marathon.
This has become an around-the-campfire chat. Yes,
definitely one of those late into the night campfire chats. So welcome, late listeners. You're listening to Humanity Transcending. You can visit me at www.humanitytranscending.com. And so we were going to get into just now syntax, sentence structure. And so what is your take on that, Stu? And have you used it in your whatever affidavits or any sort of documentation?
The first I heard about this fellow was in 1999. He was invited up to Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I didn't attend it, but I talked to the fellow that I knew, the other friend in the network that I have, that he promoted and brought him up here, and I asked him, so how was it? He says, mind-boggling. I said, so was it worth the fee to bring him up? He says, oh, yes. He said, 100 times yes. And he said he puts everything on his ear. The whole language is all written in verb fiction. It's fraud. So I didn't know what that all meant, but I had the chance to go to one of his seminars in 2000. It was in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and I went. It was in October, just after our harvest was over, so I went for a weekend. It was like a 7-hour drive to get there. And that was my first meeting with this man. He's totally, truly brilliant. I mean, IQ-wise, he's higher than probably a Supreme Court judge, or as high as anybody. He's got like a 200 IQ. And what he simply did is develop a mathematical interface with language. But in order to do that, he had to understand and realize that our language, the way we've been taught grammar in school in grade 6, grade 8, grade 10, whatever, our grammar is all taught wrong. Like the main parts of speech, like your adverbs and verbs and pronouns and adjectives and prepositions and whatever. They're all taught wrong. And he says that all language in modern day, he says for the past 8,000 years, you could argue how many thousands it is, but he says 8,000 years, all language has been written for the purpose of fraudulently conveying the language for the purpose of perverting justice. So it's fraudulent conveyance of language. So, animals, whatever, bark or meow or grunt or moo or whatever animals do, that's they communicate. But people communicate with words. And if like you go to an airport and there's a guy waving signals, right, or flags or whatever they do at airports when planes come landing in, well, they understand what these signals mean. There's no arguing that, because it's his left hand right waving this or the right hand waving it. It's a circular motion or up and down, and it doesn't matter what language. It could be a Russian pilot coming in, or Saudi Arabian pilot, or American pilot. They all know what that language means. But when we talk in our everyday English language, he says we've been taught in school to write, and it's all verb fiction. We don't have any solid facts, any nouns. Our nouns are not nouns because they don't follow a preposition or an article. So if you have a preposition or an article, the word after that is necessarily commanded to be a noun. So we could say, this chair. I'm sitting in the chair here. I could say this chair. Well, that's adverb verb. I mean, talk no more about it. I'm already off on the wrong foot. I'm talking this chair is adverb verb. So, but if you said for this chair just became a noun because it's predated with a preposition article. So for the, with the, of the, by the, those are preposition articles. So then the word after that becomes a noun. So now it's chair. So he will structure a complete court document, or wherever this letter has to go. It could be to insurance company, credit card company, car payment company. It doesn't matter what it is. IRS, he can write a document to anybody for any reason that he needs to, and he'll put the math interface numbers 1 to 10 over the 10 parts of speech. So for instance, you get a summons from court. It says, you are hereby commanded to appear in court on May 15th. Okay. You are hereby commanded. Well, there's no nouns in there. It's just, so he'll take his numbers 1, 2, 3. Like I've got them written here, someplace in a scrapbook.
Why are you looking for that? Why are you looking for that, Stu? I just on a conceptual level, is he meaning that we've been taught to speak in fiction all the time?
Yes, we have. And
that we rarely state truth and fact. I mean, what would be the distinction there? What are we doing? What are we not doing that he's doing at a conceptual level?
Well, I guess in our everyday conversation, our verbiage is fine because we understand each other. And that's our friends get along and say, how you been doing? What did you do for the weekend? Oh, I went out, went dancing. Oh, great. Have a few drinks? Oh, I had fun. Yeah. So you just talk, we communicate, we laugh, we giggle. That's all fine. But now, these courts, for instance, or some nasty collection company, they start to put these words on a piece of paper. Now it's not fun no more. Now they're coming from an adversarial perspective, and we're saying, okay, the rubber's starting to hit the road here. You got to put this in actual terms that I absolutely understand, or I'll charge you for fraud and for perjury. Okay? So now we're not talking, how you did for the weekend. They're looking, you are hereby summoned to come into court, and they want to have a piece of you. So if you're going to get that downright nasty with me, you better have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and better than that, you better have proper communication syntax. So here's the 10 parts of speech. And there's only 10. I mean, I think when I was in grade 6 or 8 or 10, there was way more than 10, but it's adverb. 1 is adverb. 2 is verb. 3 is adjective. 4 is pronoun. 5 is position, or you could call it terms, or you could call it contract. 6 is loadial, which is ownership. You ever heard the word loadial or allodial title?
Lodio,
which is ownership. Okay, Lodio, not Lodio, it's Lodio, L-O-D-I-A-L, Lodio. 7 is fact, which you could say is a noun. 8 is past tense or past time. 9 is future tense or future time. We can't be in the past, we can't be the future. We can only deal in the here now. And 10 is conjunction, which would be and or an or. So we look at a document from this nasty collection company or the court. We look at the document and we're trained to look for a 5, 6, 7. If I can't see a 5, 6, 7, I'll determine I've had some training I'll find adverbs and verbs, and whichever modifies whichever becomes a.
What do you mean?
Whatever.
Wait a minute. But you're saying you break down their whatever they send you.
Their words.
Yes,
whatever you send.
You break down their words, looking for the mathematical equivalent.
Interface. You take a pen, a red pen or a green pen that's not black, and you'll go across and whatever their words are, whatever they're saying to you, whatever they're trying to convey to you, you look across. And you'll start putting 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s and 7s and 8s and 9s and 10s on. Well, I'll tell you what you're not going to find. You're not going to find very many, if any, 5, 6, 7s. If you don't find a 5, 6, 7 count, which is, I used to call it preposition, article, noun. He calls it now position, lodio, fact, which is the same thing, but he's just altered it. He's modified it. If I don't find a 5, 6, 7, you have nothing. You have nothing but modifications of language. And modification is motion, and motion is fiction. Or modification is fiction, and fiction is motion. And it's off the page, out the window, there it went. And you could end up with the numbers over the words, unless you find a 5, 6, 7. You could end up scratch this one off because it's an adverb. Scratch that off, it's a verb. This one's an adjective, that's a pronoun. Or this is future, this is past, or this is a conjunction. By the time you're done, scratch them all off. Your page is blank.
That's crazy.
So in order to have any real solid fact, a sentence necessarily has to have 13 words. If you don't talk in 13-word sentences, there's something missing.
And so they get this. The courts understand this. The courts know this.
Sure do.
Are they supposed to be writing like this? Is this
only if they're trying to charge us?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not trying to charge us, just they want to send me a friendly reminder that coffee and dainties are being served at 4:30. That's fine. I'll be there.
So this is another thing. Let's say in my situation, right? Or that's something down there I could ask for at some point if I wanted to. Please present me the claim in proper syntax.
Communication syntax.
Communication
language,
syntax.
yes. Or I'll charge you for fraud. And if the cop comes to your car door and writes you a ticket for speeding or seatbelt or whatever, this ticket's all written in verb fiction. He signs it. You got his signed confession of fraud. But you didn't know that until you heard this conversation, obviously, until you studied David Wynn Miller. So you got his signed confession of fraud and perjury. He lied on there. He perjured himself. His signed confession, and man, oh man, when you bring that to their attention, they get scared witless.
Wow.
They have no answers for this. There's no remedy for them. There's no way out.
Everything's backwards. Everything's backwards, yeah.
Everything's backwards. And they've been getting away with this. It's with the language that they've perverted, that they've fleeced the people. I mean, it's bad enough they got their codes and their criminal codes and they got their statutes and so many things to trap us that they could trump up somebody's charge. That's bad enough. But when they do it all in verb fiction language yet to boot, like, what are we poor people supposed to do? You know, we're farmers and doctors and truck drivers and we're all busy and we're trying to raise families and make a living, and here we have to study all this stuff. Well, which of us can do that? Very, very, very few, if any. Well, David Miller made a lifetime of it. And he's got his story to tell, and I can tell you his story, but better if he told you of what happened. And everyone's got a story of where they were oppressed and in court, and that's his story, and I got mine. And it's just how did you get to where you're at? You have to have been beat up to some degree, and he was in court so many times. Every time he lost, and finally he started to really change tactics. He started to win. Now he sues judges. He says the last count was he's got 2,300 judges off the bench.
Wow.
Yep. He's got a lot of judges down the States. There's thousands of them. There's 2,300 less anyway.
They must not want him in their court. They must not want him
in
the
they sure don't. They sure don't. And now it's to the point that there's people saying, you want to give me any problems, I just got to advise you, I'm a David Will Miller law student. and if you give me problems, I'll charge you for perjury and for fraud. And the cop at the door just disappears. We had that happen. Over in Alberta, this is happening around Edmonton quite regularly. There's a hot spot there of David Windmiller students of the syntax language. So, and
they say I'm a student, David Windmiller student.
Yeah.
Wow.
You could say for the witness, because that's all we can ever be is a witness. For the witness with the knowledge is of the learning of the David Windmiller communication syntax. I mean, you've got to use the 5, 6, 7 for the, with the, of the, by the. For the witness with the knowledge is witness.
So let's slow it down for a second. So for the witness with
the knowledge. Don't make me think I'll say it wrong. But something
for the witness with the knowledge is...
With the knowledge of the communication, communication syntax is of the learning of the David Windmiller law course.
You remember when you just say it, when you say it off the cuff, you remember it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can actually, the way he teaches, he says you can turn it in a circle. You can say frontwards and backwards. It means the same thing. The truth is always, truth's in a circle. You can say it backwards and frontwards. It says the same thing. Like for the car is with the driving of the driver. For the driver is with the driving of the car. Like it's the same thing, just backwards.
Right.
Otherwise you say, there goes a car driving by. Well, it's just all verb fiction. And that's how people talk. But don't try to haul my butt into court with that kind of stuff and cost me either my body in jail or my money.
Now, why is that fiction? I guess my head is still like a little, why is that
it's fiction? Because it's not a hard fact noun. A noun is a hard fact thing, inarguable, like a maxim of law, right? It's inarguable. And if a word hasn't got a preposition article before it, it's not going to be a noun. It's going to be a modification of something else, of a pronoun or of a verb. So that it's just fiction. It's useless. It's without force and effect, unless you think it has. If you had no training, you'd think it would be, and you say, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess so. You must be right because you said so. I guess I'm bad and you're right and I'm wrong. I say, hang on there, buddy. Hold the phone. What are you talking about here? I don't see no 5, 6, 7 count here. Or I see past tense, or I see future tense, or I see adverbs and a verb is fiction, verb is motion. I see adjectives that are just modifiers of adverbs. There's nothing here. So, and they connived to do this over the course of years. Whoever it all was, the powers that be, the Masons, the Bilderbergers, the whoever, I don't know whoever. Let your mind go. It doesn't matter. But they did this. They devised the language to do that, to fleece the people. And there's no remedy, there's no way out. They fleece us all like that. But they're not fleecing him anymore. So here's what happened. And I went to Grand Forks in 2000, October, came back, and my mind was just a buzz. I mean, I thought, this was wild. This was really big for me. And my brother came up to me and says, he has a farm different than mine, different location. And he's got it's quite a beautiful place, and he's got a valley and water run and beaver dams, and you could have cattle there, I guess, if you want. He didn't have any, but the beavers were doing some damming and causing some flooding or whatever. So he had got some great big track hose / drag line, I'm not sure what, some piece of machinery, and I didn't see the whole thing, but he got dredging or digging a little bit to fix the problem up. And the Department of Waters, or Resource Management, they call it in Saskatchewan, they're sitting on a hilltop a mile away with binoculars watching this for about 3 or 4 or 5 days. Then they drove down there and charged him with altering the waterway, like it's his land. But really, is it your land? If it's really your land, how can they charge you? Look, where's this thing about ownership of land, property rights, property ownership? I guess you don't have any, do we? Well, that's another little message going on here. We don't have property rights. We don't own land.
So yeah, sole beneficiary, right? I mean, there's no, because the state owns everything already, and then ultimately it's the creator. But you have that, and you have the United Nations has interest, the IMF, the state. Mm-hmm. It's all taken already. It's all owned.
Our title is only certificate of title. It's not the title. It's only a copy of it. The real title is somebody else has it. So you don't own your land, so they can come down and charge you. Well, he didn't know what to do. It was a pretty serious charge. Like, I mean, he didn't hurt nobody. It wasn't hardly a crime, but it was
I guess, a crime against Saskatchewan resource management, if you can call it that. And there's a fairly hefty fine, and there's even a jail term. Could be and or both. He didn't know what to do. I mean, he came to me, older brother. He said, what should I do? I said, I don't know. What would you do? I said, what would I do? Well, I said, I just came back from this course down there, and I'm pretty keyed up on it. I sure like what I heard. That's 12 years ago. I didn't know much else about anything else. I just knew this. And he had these success stories and what they're doing, and it was all fresh in my mind. I thought, gee, I'd sure try that. Well, how does that work? It says, well, I started explaining to him. He said, well, how do you expect me to understand that? It's like gobbledygook. It's gibberish. I mean, how do you even begin? He said, well, would you help me with it? I says, well, sure, of course. And he's my brother. How can I say no? So I said, yeah, sure, I can, but show me this document. So he showed me his charging instrument, and I started reading it to him. I says, well, here's what we first do. We start looking at their words, and we go across with a pen and mark all their words, either a 1 or a 3, or you see lots of 1, 2, 1, 2 counts, 1, 2, and 3, 4 counts, and 1, 4, and 3, 4, and 2, 4, but you see hardly any 5, 6, 7s. You need to have 5, 6, 7s. In fact, if the whole thing could be 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, and one verb in there, and maybe a conjunction like an and or an or, that's all you can tolerate. And a sentence should be 13 words long and full of 5, 6, 7s. You'd have a perfect document.
Have you written any of your documents in 5, 6, 7?
Not recently, but I knew how to do that then.
Did you? Back then, okay.
So we did it in 2000, and he won his court case. The first time he went to court, he won it. The Crown dismissed everything. They didn't want to deal with him. And at the same time, about an hour's drive away on the news, it was a reeve, and 4 councillors of 4 municipalities were charged under exactly the same act, exactly the same charge. This is a reeve, and these councillors, that the people that are elected to take care of the ditches and the water runs and the highways, the graveling and all, not the highways, but the roads. Not Department of Highways, but the gravel roads, the country roads. And they did some water running. I don't know the details, but they were charged the same way. And they went to court and they hired lawyers, and they lost, and it cost them several $100,000. They appealed it, had to get more lawyers, and still lost. And we had the same charge, and one appearance in court, and they had enough. So we won it.
Wow.
We won it. That was in the year 2000, November 2000. It never got to trial. Never got
and
to
that's interesting. So you won it by speaking fact and truth as opposed to fiction,
yes. Yes.
And so that if you think of things like at the spiritual level, that's really interesting, because it seems like the more we can tell the truth to ourselves about really any given matter, but especially about these things, which mean when our freedom is at stake, it seems like, your truth seems to be what is the saving grace. Could it be that simple? It's almost like
without truth. What would life be in general? Without truth, what would life be in general?
Right.
Without truth, it's so fundamental.
And I read in the dictionary about the fiction and how it exists for the court to gain jurisdiction. It says it right in there, yes. in the root word fictio. It says it right in there. So it exists for that reason alone, And but when we speak our truth, it seems to just dissolve the fiction. It's really incredible.
That's right. I mean, it's even deeper. I mean, one of the 10 Commandments stipulates specifically, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. That's coming up with a lie. I mean, every time these prosecutors take people like you into court for what you've done or didn't do, or like I did, but that's not really against the law, they're bearing false witness. They're trumping up a charge to make you look bad legally. Did nothing wrong lawfully, but legally they make you look bad, and however you're charged, you're guilty as charged. I mean, whatever they say you did, you did. Because that's how our courts are. So they're bearing false witness. So they're breaking that commandment every time that they do this. So that's lying. That's bearing false witness, and that's forbid. That's a bad thing.
And that's a problem if they get called out on that could be a problem for them.
That's right. So when we infuse the truth here, it just completely annihilates their fiction, and they had nowhere to go. And my brother felt pretty darn powerful when that happened, I'll tell you. But he didn't know anything. Yeah, he didn't know anything about it, so I did the paperwork for him. And I said, here's what you got. We tutored till 1 o'clock in the morning the day before court to say exactly like this. When they say this, when you stand up, he'd never been to court before, but this is exactly what you say. For the witness with the knowledge is what the claim of whatever. There was a string of words that I can't remember what they were, but it always starts off because all you can be is a witness. And if you have any knowledge, you say it. For the witness with the knowledge. So there's a 567. 567 is with the claim, because claim, Miller says, is the most powerful word in the courts, claim. The other second most powerful word is demand. So claim and demand, those are two really, really powerful words. So when you claim something, they have to have a counterclaim, or they got nothing. And their counterclaim would be weak at best because it'll be written in the verb fiction, not the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax. So I went away from it. Then I had my own battles in court for the next several years. I didn't use it because we had heard that another woman and man team, they were a husband and wife, they were accountants, chartered accountants, they used vanilla stuff in Alberta back in 2002 or something, and they locked her up for a 30-day psych assessment. Like, what they do is they strike out and make you look like you're crazy. They're really great for that. They say, well, we're not so sure you understand what's going on, or I think I'm going to order a 30-day psych assessment. Next thing you're hauled out and you're to the loony bin. They do that to people, and they can keep you there for sometimes way more than that. They just don't deem you to be competent or fit for trial. They can keep you for 6 months. Like it's a really bad position to be in. So I kind of got gun shy from that, and I didn't use it. Then we met other gurus, and I started doing some other things. But this has been in the back of my mind, and now it's kind of resurrected itself again because I got some friends in Alberta that are studying it and having real success at the door of the vehicle, not carrying driver's licenses, and the cop just doesn't want nothing to do with them when you say the right thing. You better bring your law to me in the correct sentence structure, syntax, or I'll charge you for fraud and perjury. And the one time the guy just had a disc playing on the seat beside him, a David Will Miller CD or DVD, and he slammed that up against his 7/8 closed window, just open an inch or two. He slammed up against the window, and he says, "Look here, buddy, I'm a David Miller law student, and I understand language, and if you give me any problems, I'll charge you." And the cop whipped out, not his gun, and not his pepper spray. He whipped out his pen, his notepad. He's peering at that DVD, looking at the website on it, on the company's website. He wrote the website and a phone number, went back to his car, phoned his fearless leader, the prosecutor, who's there, 24/7. And they talked for a few minutes. He came back and says, you just have yourself a very good day. Be on your way. Wow. He was told, do not proceed with this because it'll get you nowhere. It'll get you trouble. Wow. So the prosecutors in Alberta already know all about David Will Miller.
Okay.
If you stand your ground with confidence that you know, and you know that you know, they don't want to find out how much you really do know or don't know. So I'm looking at it again with a renewed interest again.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested in it too.
But it's almost too much. I mean, you learn something and you switch gears, learn something else, and switch gears, learn something else again, and
there's so much.
You start to maybe don't master anything properly, and it's just like a dog's breakfast, and then you really end up in court and don't know what to say. Try to do this and that, then you look like you're double-minded. Now you look like now you are crazy.
Yes.
Stick to one thing only until you get, like Miller, obviously all he knows is his technology that he invented. And he sent his stuff around the world already. The United Nations has it, the World Court has it, all levels of government have it. So they all know. They know who he is. They sure know who he is. And his students are winning court cases, but there's nothing ever being published. People say, well, I want to Google that up and check this out. You're going to find nothing. You'll never find anything. That'll never be published.
Yeah.
Except to talk to people that had the court case disappear, like my brother did. That wasn't published. But I'm telling you now, that was 2000, November.
That's incredible. So did your brother understand these things, or he just kind of went along for the ride?
Probably as much as you do right now.
Okay.
That's about it. He didn't ever go back after it since, and he didn't really. I mean, he was working, at a job that paid a lot of money, and this takes a lot of devotion, a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
And you have to really be a student of it, or else it'll drive you crazy, because it's information overload. You have to start unlearning what you learned in school. I mean, there's so many things we have to forget what we heard in school, and unlearn that and learn something else. It's like you're giving yourself a lobotomy almost and starting over again. I'm tired of doing that.
The deprogramming.
So when you're a truth seeker, if you're a truth seeker, you'll do that.
Yes.
And I've taken my truth seeking to yet another level, and that's more at the spiritual level. What I've learned all my life in the so-called, mainstream church, most is wrong, and very wrong. And then when I got listening to someone who's speaking the truth, holy smokes, I couldn't almost comprehend what I was hearing, and all I had learned all these years was not right. But there is truth, and this is truth according to Scripture, word for word. But it's explained properly. So a truth seeker will stop nowhere. I want truth in commerce, truth in the courts, truth in government, truth in the church.
Yeah.
I don't want to be lied to. I'm sick and tired of being. Even a 3-year-old kid doesn't want to be lied to. You can tease a kid, and pretty soon he catches on that mommy or uncle, or uncle's usually bad for that because I used to do that you're teasing, or they being like, kid doesn't want to be fooled. Well, I'm not a kid no more either. I don't want to be fooled, because sometimes that fooling can end you up in jail, and we're lied to, and I don't want to be lied to no more.
Yeah, I don't want to either. I'm sick of it.
Not much truth out there.
Well, when we dig it up, though, we find it when we dig. You're a digger like me.
Your book that I'm only just almost half through it, I guess, or a third through it. You've dug up lots in that. I mean, you're a truth seeker as well, and you're uncovering things, most of which I did know or was aware of, and you're hitting the nail on the head with this stuff. So it is true. You're dead on right with it, and it's the problem out there is huge. It's unfathomable to the degree of the corruption for the control of humanity. It's all about control. Like power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And someone doesn't want to work, and someone does not pay taxes. At the very, very top, someone does not pay taxes. But they got the IRSs of the countries running around, bleeding the people, not just fleecing them, bleeding them, to keep those that don't pay never having to pay. And I don't like that. I guess we're stuck with it, but I don't like it.
Well,
I'm just not participating in it.
No, that's the best we can do right now, and are we stuck with it? Maybe it appears so, but I don't know. I see people shifting in their mind, and I think I know that's where it all starts. We have to start there, and we have.
Mm-hmm. By being aware.
By being aware.
At the same time, with moderation, we're really not supposed to cause strife, and causing strife, even defending yourself, sometimes it causes strife, and that leads to no peace, unrest. And I've been enjoying a level of peace. We're just working on a farm and, trying to make a crop. Right now we're seeding, and so that there's a crop to harvest in the fall and make some money and be able to retire one day soon. And that's all we want to do, is leave us alone.
Yeah, I think most people want peace. We all want peace.
That's all I want. I mean,
most of us.
Even rich people want peace, and money can't buy it. But overcoming situations can earn it by overcoming. And I've done some of that, and I don't know, maybe I'll have peace land tomorrow, and I'll be meeting the cops of the road when I leave my house. I don't know. I'll deal with that when it comes. But so far, life's been, for the last few years, extremely peaceful, and that's all I've ever.
I'm really
ever
happy
wanted.
to hear that. I'm really happy to hear that, because you put your dues in for yourself, so it's nice to know that it has been peaceful for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there's a silver lining or payday or whatever, I'm starting to enjoy that. But there was cost. This road to sovereignty, which is that's not even a good word. Only God is sovereign. You can't be a sovereign. If you want to be sovereign, you better have a castle, an army, your own money, a moat full of alligators, and you can't interact with anybody to be sovereign. You can't depend on anybody. That's so.
So what would you call it? Because some people, like let's say Gordon Hall, when he hears the word sovereign, he replaces it with authority. What's your take on that?
Well,
because
that can work.
That could work, right?
Yeah, that could work because it says way earlier in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, to go out and have dominion. We're told to have dominion. And actually, one guy used that in court. He quoted the verse. I can find it for you. It's early. It's early in Genesis, chapter 1 or 2 even. Go out and have dominion over the earth. We're told by the Creator of this place to have dominion over the fishes, of the birds of the air, and of all the things. And this guy was charged, I think, if I'm not wrong, it was a dope charge, a marijuana charge. And I think he used that line. He said, does this court take judicial notice of the King James Bible? Like you have to bring it in. And the court has to say, well, yes, it does, because it's in the courtroom. They have to say yes. Well, does the court take judicial notice of Genesis chapter blah, 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 verse so-and-so? Well, they have to say yes, because how can they say no? They said, well, I'm putting into evidence this verse and have dominion. They dismissed the case, right? That can be that simple. So we're told to have dominion, which is authority. But at the same time, like your host asked, what is the one law? Well, don't trespass. Don't harm anybody. As long as you're not harming anybody, we can have dominion. You can do anything you want. You have all the rights that God gave you, and the list is long, way too long to mention. The right to do anything, unless and until you start to infringe on the rights of anybody else. So have dominion. Now, how can some man have dominion over you? Then suddenly he's not a man. Then he's a god of some kind, or you're less than a man. That can't be. We're all equal. We're all created equal. There's a maximum law says equality under the law is both mandatory and paramount, or paramount and mandatory. So if a judge says, I think we're going to order a 30-day psych assessment for you, say, thank you very much. I'll accept that, but because of equality in the law is paramount and mandatory, you come with me, Judge. Now suddenly he don't want to go. He's no higher than you are. I don't care what his paycheck says.
Right.
He's just a man. He eat and drink, sleep, and whatever else men do too, and scratch and whatever. He's just a man.
I find that really
interesting. They like to lord themselves over us and make us to be subservient to them, and that they're this almighty authority. Well, we don't need that unless you've hurt somebody. Then you've given up that right if you hurt somebody.
Again, that's simple rule. It's just so simple, and that's the beauty of it. We really just can enjoy life and explore life so long as we're not hurting anyone. And then it's all good. I thought it was interesting when you spoke about your friend, was it, who brought the Bible into court and asked the court if the court took judicial notice of the King James Bible, and that they had to say yes. And this is all because, again, their whole system is based on that. That's correct, right?
Yeah, it's almost, they watered it down so bad that you'd wonder about it, but yeah, it's still based on it.
Well,
it's still based on law.
They have to acknowledge that for some reason, right? Because that's what they swear on. So you could put into evidence a verse, any verse in the Bible. I mean, I guess you could put in anything into evidence, but when you put that into evidence, what does that do? What does that invoke in a way? Like, what does that signal for the court? How would a judge hear that?
You mean like the having dominion part, you mean? That one particular?
Anything. Yeah. The verse that your friend entered as evidence. I mean,
well, how would you invoke that? He invoked it by putting it in, and you put them in, like Roger Alvick used to say, you put them into a court in their own conscience. They hold court in their own conscience, because they took oaths to that same God. Even if it's a heathen judge or whatever, I don't care. He still had to swear an oath, so help me God. And it could be a Muslim or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. They all take an oath. And they better not breach that oath, or they won't sleep at night. And that's nothing that I can make happen. It's something that happens all by itself. So they're put into a court of their own conscience, I guess, of sorts. So they won't override that. There's actually a Supreme Court case. It's in America, and somebody tells me it's U.S. versus Seeger, I think is what it is, and I hate to say it and I misquote it, but it's where the Supreme Court justice says that there is a higher power that we don't want to reckon with. Whatever judgment that they pass, there is a higher power that they have no control over. So the U.S. Supreme Court recognizes a higher power. I mean, you'd have to really be really ignorant to not recognize that, because it's all about you. It's all around you. I mean, how could you deny it? But some will try to. But the U.S. Supreme Court, at least in this nation, Canada and the United States, they do recognize that. So it's you can even quote that. You could Google it and find it. You can even quote it, because I've heard it for years already. So they recognize that. So they won't override that. Another one used Genesis 1 verse 29. That one I happen to remember, because that one is I just happen to remember. It was a marijuana charge again. Well, where this plant is being outlawed.
Yeah.
And you're charged or jailed for using it. Well, this plant was made by God. It says, Genesis 1:29 says, "Behold, I give you all plants and herb-bearing plants to use as food." So every plant and every plant seed that it makes to make another plant, the whole lineage of plants and every plant, right from the thistle to the thorn to the marijuana to the beautiful gladiolas, I don't care, whatever, to the wheat that we eat, or the barley that we eat and make beer out of. All those things are to be used as food. So Genesis 1:29 states that every plant that's been ever made, God instituted and made grow. Man can't make a plant grow. You can GMO alter it. That just screws it up. But you've made nothing. You've just ruined it. But only God can make a plant. So are you telling me, Judgy Wudgy, that you can overrule what God said? You can outlaw a plant that He gave to me as a gift? Judge threw it out. Because his conscience bothered. Now, you might get some judges that will just steamroll you and who knows what. Because there's good judges and bad judges and anything in between. It just depends.
Well, and let me ask you a question. If you have, let's say, some paperwork into the court, would this help you in terms of them steamrolling? If it's been like, let's say they're in default, like in my situation, because I know they didn't really pay attention to the affidavit that second time I was there, which is why they hauled me off. But then the next time I went there, well, I didn't see that they saw it. It looked to me like they were just seeing it, or the prosecutor was anyway, just seeing it for the first time that day. But anyway, I'm saying in terms of them steamrolling, it's important to establish one's like standing for themselves in the form of some sort of sworn testimony, like an affidavit or a deposition, and putting that into the court, establishing who one is, so that as you go forward in dealing with them, it's less easier for them to steamroll.
Yes, that's true.
Would you say a little bit?
Yes, and at the same time, they may do what they're going to do anyways, because we see that happening too. They just do what they're going to do, but you throw as many hurdles in front of them as you can, and you just be a witness. That's all we can do, be just a witness. And speak the truth as much as you know it, and do your paperwork as much as you can do it, and they're going to do what they're going to do. So it's really hard to. There's no, even a lawyer couldn't really tell you the outcome of court, because they don't know either. It just happens how it depends so much on the judge, on the witnesses, on the circumstances, on his mood, on what day it is. There's lots of things that determine how court out. Or if it's a jury, then you're up to 12 different people that have sometimes different morals or ideas about you that could convict you or let you go. So it's really a card game or a Russian roulette game when you go to court. Like, you should try not ever to let matters get to court. How do you do that? First of all, don't break the law. Maybe don't get up out of bed in the mornings. But it says in the Bible too that to settle with an adversary before they take you to court. Because once you take you to court, then the judge, they may throw you to the jailer, and the jailer throws you into the jail till the last farthing is paid. So it's already too late. Try to deal with them, with your brother, your adversary, before court. As much as possible, settle your differences before. That's why when you get a ticket, there's always 45 days before court. But so many people say, I got to go to court week after next. What are you doing meanwhile? Oh, I'm busy. I'll go to court and I'll ask for more time, debtor, or I'll hire a lawyer, debtor, incompetent debtor. You know, you're just screaming a whole bunch of positions that you're holding, and none of them are good. Deny, delay, adjourn, hire a lawyer. It's all debtor. So you got 45 days to A for V it, or do an affidavit, and look for, because you could pretty much complete or exhaust an administrative process in 45 days if you get busy at it. But most people say, I have no time for that. I haven't got time to, I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, never mind learn it.
You mean same process with the court? You mean like the same process with the court right now? You just make an affidavit, give them 10 days to respond, then notice of fault, opportunity to cure, and then default.
You shouldn't have to even go to court the first time. Get them in a default before you even go to court. But people are going there and, I'll tell the judge. I'll explain to the judge. Explain better. Oh, I'll want but another fellow says, they want to dance, I'll dance with them. Dance? You think that's a dance? The jailhouse hop? That's some dance. No, you ain't fit to dance with them. You don't dance with those people. They dance to their own music. You settle with them before you go, and that's why you got 45 days. You never get a traffic ticket and go to court the next day. There's always 2-3 weeks or whatever. It's usually 45 days. There's always time to do something, and what they're really telling you to do is get busy and do your administrative process, but we don't get it.
Right. Well, some of us are getting it. Some of us are
That's
trying
right. Some of us are getting it.
You know?
Some of us are
getting it. Yeah, I'm working it. I'm doing it. You know, I'm being diligent about it, and I'm very grateful because I have just wonderful support, you know, in place, and you're a huge part of that. So, you know, always eternally grateful for that. Anyway, I think I'm losing steam. It's about 3:30 in the morning where I am.
Yeah, it would be. It's 1:30 here.
Yeah, and but this was just a blast. Dave, are you there? You wanna chime in while we close out? Are you there? Maybe he's not there. Well,
what do you mean maybe I'm not?
Presumption.
Just because I've been at this 16 hours doesn't mean a thing starting into the 17th hour.
Well, I'm thinking about winding down the hour here.
Well, I got to say this. Stuart and Lisa, have been...
Lisa? Who's Lisa?
Siobhan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Siobhan. No, I've got...
You must be reading something, multitasking.
13 of the 14 shows are up in the archives already.
Nice job.
And I have to do this one that'll take about, maybe a total of 40 minutes to process it and get it up there.
This was a long one. We went 3.5 hours, right? Roughly.
Actually, 2 hours and 24 minutes.
Okay, I thought we started at midnight my time, and it's 3:30 now. So.
Well, you started at
9 your time, right?
Oh my golly, it has been 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours.
3.5, not 2.5. Yeah.
3 hours and 22 minutes and 18 seconds right now.
Well, this is a classic. I think it's a classic interview. We covered so many different areas. I mean, and it went by quick, 3.5 hours, but it went by pretty quick, you know. Stuart,
it has been absolutely mind-boggling, to say the least.
I totally get that, Dave. I'm so used to Stu now. I just enjoy him so much. But you know, I mean, yeah, like the first time I talked to him, I was just like, you know, my jaw was on the floor even more, and my jaw always on the floor from the things I'm learning. But you know, Stu helps me getting to a different level that I want to get to. So he's good people. So, Stuart, thank you so much for sharing yourself and your experiences and what you've learned over the years. And just thank you for being yourself and joining us.
Well, I can't apologize for any of them. I did what I did. It is what it is. If it can help anybody in the future to don't do this or to help them through that, that's all I can do.
Yeah.
Well, Stuart, I am grateful that you can come up here and talk about it, because it's rare that we actually have a guest on Wolf Spirit Radio who can say he has lived what he's talking about.
Mm.
I mean, it's not that my other guests, the hosts, don't have great information. They do. But, you know, it's like me trying to prove I'm a super soldier. It don't work. There's no records.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't rare to me, believe me. But maybe it is to you, I don't know that.
I can understand that better than you could imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But it gave me, it was like a lifetime of experiences crammed into about 2 to 3 years. I mean, the long and the short of it. It was about 2 to 3 years. Some aftermath got me back into court a year or so later again, but that was aftermath of it. It just lingered on, and I still wouldn't quit. And so it was many years crammed into 3 or 4. And
like a quantum
I want to move on and think about, okay, what's coming next. And yeah, there's corruption, but I see all that too. And you know, we can't fix this. I tried fixing it. It's way too big for me to fix. And we're almost like going to a hell in a handbasket, so to speak. And I don't think anybody can fix it until the Bible says what's going to happen, until Christ returns. And that's going to be very soon, by the way. He'll fix it. It isn't my job to fix it. I tried, and I'm futile. I'm useless. But I can tell you what happened to me or what things were done. There's just little details. But I'm no hero. I didn't fix nothing. And it's,
well, I mean, you don't have to look at it in terms of a hero, but I mean, you were able to, let's at least just say, you know, co-create your life the way you want it, in a way. Right?
Well,
like
it's better now than it was before, I suppose, but
yeah.
It had to get better. It couldn't get much worse. So it is. As long as it stays at this level, I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
well, I think you're doing awesome.
Well, I enjoyed the chit-chat. Mind you, we've had a few chit-chats. I enjoyed just as much as this one.
Yeah, this one was fun, too. It's even more fun because we'll be able to go back and listen to it. It'll be on
about
on
40
the archives.
minutes after it's over.
Well, I'll be hopefully off in sleep, counting sheep.
Yeah, I'll be sleeping in less minutes on that. Well, Siobhan, you can send me the link sometime for that.
Yeah, I'll send it over to you tomorrow. I'll go on the website tomorrow. So, all right, Dave. I just want to send a big hug and love out to you. Thank you for letting me just go on and on. 3.5 hours and having a good time here.
There's the link I just put in there, Siobhan.
Okay, great. And Stu, I love you, my dear friend.
I didn't put the last hour in there yet.
And you guys have a good night. So this is Humanity Transcending signing off. Again, you could visit my YouTube channel too. I have a few little videos up there, and I'm gonna make more, just kind of documenting my experience as I go along here. So that's just Humanity Transcending. Everything I do is pretty much under that title. So you can just plug that in and find the book or the audio book or the videos, all sorts of stuff. So signing off. Everybody have a good night.
God bless you all.
Thank you so much. And to everyone that's been here all day, thank you. I'm going to play some music while I get this down and see if what I'm going to do for tonight. Until then, this is Dave once again from the depths of the Wolf's Den saying thank you for being here. And don't forget to hit the donate button once in a while. Bye-bye.